So this lunar eclipse on March the 3rd is saying you've been performing your entire life to feel worthy, but here's the truth that nobody tells you. The performance may have kept you alive as a child, and now it's killing you as an adult. March the 3rd, 2026 is what that pattern finally breaks. So imagine there's a wall in your heart that separates life-giving blood from, used up toxic blood. Yours is compromise. You have let others' opinions contaminate your self-worth. So think of this lunar eclipse as cardiac surgery for your soul. That's asking you to ask, who are you when nobody's watching? Who are you when there's no applause? This eclipse forces you to answer these questions without performing the answer, and with Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, squaring this eclipse, the rays that you weren't allowed to express, the wildness you've tamed, the too much energy you dimmed so others feel comfortable, while Lilith is unlocking that basement door. Want to find out more? Listen on. Hey everybody, and welcome to this special on the lunar eclipse in Leo on the 3rd of March 2026 at 11:34, and then we've got the new moon happening at 11:38. So at first I'm going to give the summary version, this eclipse in 10 minutes, and if you know me by now, then I'm going to go into a deep dive for a few hours or so, looking at it from every single angle, looking at all the aspects, the Sabian symbols, and the retrogrades that are happening, and just everything else, how it affects our relationships, and loads of advice, and then of course advice for the sun, moon and rising signs as well. So yeah, I'm Imani, your holistic karmic astrological life coach, and it's my pleasure to do this for you guys. The theme of this lunar eclipse in Leo is the energy, the vibe is, wanting us to shatter the performance that we've never choose. So giving up being who we were told to be and stepping into our authentic self. So it's the emotional reckoning, the judgment, right? The calling out eclipse, right? That's what this eclipse is doing. It's spilling all the tea, right? Telling us to start performing worthiness, destroying our performance of worthiness, and asking us to actually realize that we're worthy and to step into our authentic self-expression. Okay, so this is a total lunar eclipse in Leo, the 19th degree of Leo, which is the Nakshatra Parva Phalanganini, and it is known as the former red one or the fig tree, and it's happening in the second pada, and this is the Namvasa ruled by Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury as well. And the Sabian symbol, the 19th degree, controls the war between our heart chambers, and the Sabian symbol is a houseboat party. And don't worry, I'm going to let you know the significance of all of this. I'm just giving you the snapshot now. And then we've also got the moon making a parallel, which is like a conjunction with Bellatrix, right? And this theme of the fixed star Bellatrix, the constellation, right, is success through shadow work. So this lunar eclipse, the full moon, is, telling us that if we want to make the use of this energy over the next 6 months, this is how long eclipse lasts, right up until September. That's when the next lunar eclipse is going to be. We have to be willing to go deep into the depths of our psyche and work through our emotional, psychological and spiritual baggage. So the south node is in Leo and the north node is in the 15th degree of Aquarius as well, and the moon is making a conjunction with the south node, and the sun's making a conjunction with the north node. So the moon enters Leo on the 2nd of March at 2:22, and the eclipse, as I said, is on the 3rd of March at 11:34. Then the moon leaves Leo on the 4th of March at 8:16, so it spends 30 hours in Leo, then it enters void of course for a few hours, and then it goes to Virgo, right, at 8:16 a.m. GMT time. So we also have the North Node going retrograde on the 3rd of March at 4:38, 7 hours before this eclipse. So I'm going to go into depth what all this means later on, but for now this is just summary version. So the positives of this Leo eclipse on the 3rd of March is the dead, our ancestors, are back in the living, fully ancestral support finally activating through crisis. And we had the solar eclipse 2 weeks ago, so if you listen to that audio, you can still listen to it because it takes us right up until the next solar eclipse in August, right, where I talked about the Sabin symbol there, and it was our ancestors wanting us to go into the shadows and to do the things that they didn't do, or more importantly, you know, live for ourselves and express our authentic selves. So our performance armor, you know, just doing things to get likes, can be cracking, breaking. So who we really are can finally breathe and come to the surface. Our external validation addiction, this eclipse allows it to be surgically removed from our heart if we want to do that shadow work, right? And because I'm a, you know, practical, holistic astrologer, so I believe in, you know, the planets give us the energy through the aspects and, you know, solar and lunar eclipses, but it's about us, right, using this energy in the ways that we want to benefit us or destroy us. You know, it's up to us, right? I'm very much into free will and not the fate of astrology, like saying, oh, because my sun in Leo, I'm going to always be this, or I've got a, you know, 12th house, so my life is doomed. Planets in the 12th house just means that a lot of your life and retrograde planets is more inward, whereas when planets are not in retrograde, it's expressed more outward, right? And yeah, you will have some struggles, especially if you've got Saturn in the 12th house. It's about disciplining your thinking, right? Uranus in the 12th house is about disciplining your individuality, and that's why it's inward, right? And Neptune is about working through your addictive tendencies. But anyway, another positive of this Leo eclipse, getting back on track, right, is we can be more visible without the accompanying terror and the fear of being rejected and people not liking us, right? It gives us the creative power that doesn't need likes and applause and external validation to exist, right? And self-worth that comes from an internal source from within us, not from external approval, right? So ultimately, positively, this lunar eclipse in Leo on the 3rd of March is giving us the ability to shine without dimming ourselves first to fit into other people's expectations, the ability to be ourselves, you know. We can have, you know, sort of like, for those of you who feel like you've been invisible, you know, because you're not being your full self, you know, scared of showing your full self, you can become a bit angry with this, a bit rageful at invisibility, but in the right way. Finally giving yourself the permission to speak your truth, you know, and to be visible in the ways that you want to be visible, not being visible in the ways that, you know, pretending to be someone else so people will accept you, right? But negatively, because our entire sense of self can collapse because, you know, it was built on others' opinion, and that's scary now that we're saying this is not who we are, right? Our sense of self is being questioned and we can kind of feel lost for a bit, right? So this eclipse can bring sudden ending of relationships, just sudden realizations that you're not who you actually are, you know, you're just a version of yourself that's susceptible to others' expectations. You can also feel humiliated because you can realize that you've been performing someone else's script, living other people's dreams, right? And also for those of you who are used to hiding your emotions, you know, this emotional exposure of the full moon, lunar, total eclipse, right, can make you not even be able, even if you like A+ at hiding your emotions, this eclipse can just make everything come out, right, in a way that you can't control or contain, and this can be scary. And, you know, because you may refuse to play that role anymore, the people, the audience can leave, and, you know, you cannot know who you are without the pretense, without the lights and the external validation. right? And you can also just feel blocked creatively, especially if you're a content creator or any other form of artist, right? Or just in general, realizing that you've been making art or making a living, maybe going to school because your parents said, oh, you gotta be a doctor or a lawyer, whatever, or, being a dentist, or I don't know, any other thing, living for others, right? Making art, making a living for approval, not your authentic self-expression or choice, right? Not choosing your career through choice, but just living someone else's dream. Relationships, as I said, can end because they were built on your performance, not your truth, right? And there also can be a terror of being seen as you actually are. You can be scared. That's why we hide ourselves, because will they really love us, if we're not our creative self anymore, and this can be really fearful. We can get scared, and that's why we don't express ourselves, right? And we can also, have a lot of grief and pain and rage and regrets over all the years that we weren't ourselves, so yeah, grieve that time, but don't get lost in it. And I know that's easier said than done, but let yourself have a grieving period, but remember, time's gone, you can't get that back. But what you don't want to do is let regrets rob you of the time that you've got left to build and express the real you, right? So the best use of this energy is to let the performance die. Don't try to save it, grieve it. Notice where you're still checking if people are watching before you exist, right? Feel the full weight of performing for survival and acknowledge the cost of that, right? Identify whose voice is in your head saying you're too much, right, or not enough. Reclaim one creative act that you've abandoned because it didn't get the response you needed. Practice existing without immediate validation. Sit with that discomfort. Speak one truth that you've been hiding because it made you feel less likable. If you spoke it, speak it. Grieve the child who learned that performance kept them safe. And yeah, that's the best use. Now, as I said before, the North Node goes retrograde, right, on the day of the eclipse, and this isn't an accident, right? This is astrological choreography at its finest, right? So the sequence is on the 2nd of March at 2:22, the moon enters Leo, 33 hours before the eclipse, and you can start feeling the energy of Leo intensify, fits fire, right? On the 3rd of March, the North Node goes retrograde, 7 hours before the eclipse, and this can be when our karmic direction reverses. We start thinking, hold on, the direction I thought I was going in isn't the direction I need to go in, right? Or I've been going in the wrong direction, we can do a total 360 or 180, is it? Anyway, on the 3rd of March, at 11:34, the lunar eclipse peaks, and this is when the full crisis energy, explodes, and at 11:38, that's when the full moon is exact, 4 minutes after the peak of the eclipse, right? And then on the 4th of March, the moon enters into Virgo, and this is when the work begins, right? All 6th house service, looking after our health and hygiene, right? And the North Node stationing before the eclipse means whatever you're about to confront during this lunar crisis is connected to what you left behind when you started moving towards the North Node in July 2023. The part of yourself you thought you release, the performer, the people pleaser, the one who needs validation to exist, the child who learned that specialness equals safety. So because the sequence of this energy is activating the events of July 2023, right? So whatever, if you think back to 2.5 years ago, right, realistically, what did you think you was leaving behind? This eclipse is reminding you that you didn't release it, you suppressed it, you kept it in, maybe you bypassed it, pretended that it didn't exist, performed releasing it while still secretly clinging to whatever it was. For some of you it could be the habit of people pleasing, or staying in a toxic relationship, or being, kept in a cycle of addiction. This North Node is saying go back and get it. for real this time, not to keep performing it, to actually grieve it, understanding why you needed it, and thank it for keeping you alive, and then fully let it rest, right? So sometimes we can, just be like, oh, I'm getting rid of this habit, and forget about it, and not realizing that every single thing, even some things that are painful, has a reason, has a purpose, right? And it just reminds us to, thank whatever it was, or truly release it instead of performing releasing it. Some of you may have said, okay, I'm gonna, give up that relationship, but you haven't dealt with that part of you that wanted that toxic relationship in the first place, So the question to ask yourself is, what are you reviewing? So for some of you, it's where you're still performing instead of resisting. For others, it's where you're still checking for approval before speaking your truth. For some of you, it's where you are still dimming your light, making yourself small so others can feel comfortable. For others of you, it's where you're still making your visibility about other people's comfort instead of your authentic expression. And of course we have to respect other people's space and energy and their beliefs or whatever, but we still have to be ourselves, right? And others of you, it's where you have been humble, and down to earth or whatever, and this has become another performance to avoid the terror and the fear of being genuinely seen for who you are. So the North Node retrograde wants you to go back through all the Leo patterns you thought you've moved beyond, not as punishment, as completion, as ending, right? Reminding you that you can't move forward to Aquarius collective service, revolutionary vision, being part of something bigger, while you're still secretly hoping someone would notice how special you are for moving forward, because that's just Leo dressed in Aquarius clothing. The North Node knows. So it's saying go back to whatever it is you've run away from, whatever it is you have been denying, and clean it up properly, deal with it properly on an emotional, psychological and spiritual level. So yeah, for you guys that just want the summary version, that was it. That's it. If you want to go in depth, well, stay with me. So the moon and the sun are doing a lot at the time of this eclipse. There's a lot of aspects to go through. So now I'm going to mention all the major aspects and the stelliums that's going on and all the other good stuff in brief. And don't worry if you don't memorize them, because I'm going to mention them in depth when I talk about the planetary battleground, as I'm calling it, the aspects in more depth a bit later on. So in terms of the moon aspects from the moon in Leo, the moon is making a conjunction with the south node, and this wants us to release performance patterns. That's it in a nutshell. The moon also is making an opposition to the north node, and this is about resisting collective service. The moon's also making an opposition to Mercury, and this is our emotions versus our logic, the divide between them. The moon is also making a sextile to Jupiter, and this is all about emotional growth. The moon is making an opposition to Pallas as well, the asteroid, and this is our feelings can resist wisdom, and the moon is making a square to the black moon Lilith, and this is activating our rage, right? And don't worry, I'm going to tell you what all of this means later. As I said, this is just the theme of this energy of this eclipse, right, in a nutshell. So the sun is also in Aquarius, and he's making an opposition to the south node, and this is all about consciousness moving beyond performance, so allowing us to see and become more self-aware. The sun's making a conjunction to the moon's north node, and this allows our will, our actions, our sort of like motivation to align with our destiny, with our life direction. The sun is making a conjunction to Mercury, so this is our mind and identity coming together, so our mind and soul can work together, right? And then we've got the sun making a trine to Jupiter, once again allowing our consciousness to grow through allowing ourselves to just flow with the change rather than clinging onto things, right? And the sun makes a quintal to Uranus, and this is giving us that genius, that genius energy. Uranus and coal rules Aquarius Aquarius. So it's allowing us to have breakthroughs if we're open to being who we are, because Uranus is all about our self-expression, right? And then the Sun's making a trine to the Ascendant, and this is about our identity flowing towards new expression. And the Sun's conjunction to Pallas is our warrior wisdom, mixed, fused with our will. And this is the second tightest aspect, right? So Pallas, the asteroid, is like Chiron, a different sort of, it's the wisdom asteroid, and this is allowing us to think our way through our problems, right? And the Sun is also making a square to the black moon, Lilith, right? And this allows us to confront our rage with consciousness. So rather than just let our rage just blindly lead us places, this is telling us to use our rage in a constructive way, right? And then there's some other aspects that I really want to mention in depth, because I feel that they have impact on this eclipse. So we've got the Saturn, not the Saturn, but yeah, the Saturn, making a square with the Ascendant. So this allows us to build routine and structure, in terms of, in ways that challenges our visibility, right? So allowing us to become more visible for ourselves in a structured and routined way. We've got the ongoing sextile between Neptune and Pluto that's on and off, up until 2030, I believe. And this allows us to bring spiritual depth, and it meets transformation. So allowing us to bring spirituality or higher consciousness, philosophical thinking, deeper awareness into changing our life, right? Saturn is also making a conjunction to Neptune, which is the third tightest aspect, and this is when reality and mysticism, spirituality combine, right? We've got Saturn grounding Neptune, so this is really good. This is ongoing as well, so this is nice energy, allowing us to stay grounded while we go into the spiritual, right? We also got Saturn making a sextile to Pluto in Capricorn, and this is about change, transformation through endurance, right? And we also got Saturn making a semi-sextile to the Midheaven, and this is about, it's putting pressure on us and our public image, and the ways that others see us, and expectations to make us realise that maybe we shouldn't be living up to other people's expectations, but it's bringing tension and into our awareness, right? Who are we? Are we just being who we are to get applause and likes, and then we've got Uranus making the square to the Midheaven, and this is helping us change, bringing a revolution into how we are seen. And then we've got Pluto making a semi-sextile to the Midheaven, so this allows us to sort of it brings power dynamics in our relationships to the surface, right? Especially in our career, especially in all things 10th house, right? So as I said, at the time of this Leo eclipse on the 3rd of March 2026, we've got a few aspect patterns happening. So we've got a false Hammond. So in astrology, it's a aspect pattern where there is a quinquats aspect to two other planets that are in sextile to each other, creating a pattern that resembles a hammer shape, right? Then we've got a T-square, which is a pattern formed when two planets in opposition are both square to a third planet, creating tension and challenging energy that demands resolution. So it demands us, confronting it and, making a solution, right? A stellium is a concentration of three or more planets in the same zodiac sign or house or degree orb as well. So, they've got to be in a degree orb, but typically they're in the same planet, zodiac sign, or house, right? And a stellium increases the characteristics and themes associated with that sign or house, right? So we've got a T-square involving the moon and the south node in Leo, opposing Sun, Pallas and the North Node and the Midheaven in Aquarius, with the black moon, Lilith at the peak right in Scorpio, squaring both sides. So our rage is the release valve for this entire eclipse, right? So it's telling us to scream, let it all out. get some Bjork on or some heavy metal or something, you know, and just rage against the machine a little and, you know, let it out. So in your anger, but in a nice way, you know. For some of you, I don't, you know, I'm not going to say, you know, respect other people's boundaries, but sometimes a good blowout is what's needed to get things off our chest, right? So you be the judge of that. But this energy is saying that, you know, tension, rage and anger, but obviously no physical, verbal abuse or anything. I'm not advocating for that. Can help you manage this energy of the eclipse, right? And then we've got two force hammers. So the first at the 25% orb between Juno in Sagittarius, Sesti squared by Chiron in Pisces, Ceres in Aries and the South Node in Leo. So this is bringing committed partnerships, allowing them to be hammered by old wounds, you know, forged, built and molded into something new, right? But also, you know, what is it? It's being hammered, so old wounds, nag, conflict, old wounds coming up, unresolved issues. You know, we typically avoid the hard stuff in relationships, right? So this eclipse can bring everything we're avoiding to the surface, as I said. And the second force hammer between the South Node in Leo, Sesti squared by Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio and Chiron in Pisces. So everything that we've been performing to avoid rejection is being like compressed until it breaks. So it's basically, this force hammer is not giving us any space to hide. It's saying be who you are, and anything that, you know, you kind of build out of pretense can crumble right now, you know. And yeah, it can be painful, but ultimately this eclipse wants us to let go of what's toxic for us on the relationship level, communication level, and especially our internal dialogue, right? And on the psychological, physical and emotional, spiritual levels as well. So we've got three stelliums. So we've got Venus, Saturn, Neptune in Pisces at 25% orb tightness. And this is bringing love through dissolution, through letting go, going with the flow. And we've got the Sun, Pallas on the North Node in Aquarius, also at 25 degree orb tightness, and this is allowing us to be strategic in our evolution, so to plan how we're going to get out of the things that are holding us back, right? You know, to think before we react. Like I said, the rage, we need it, but we need to channel it in a healthy way. And then we've got Mars, Vista and the Midhaven in Aquarius at a 19% orb, allowing us to be more devoted in our action in public, right? So as I said, I'm going to go into all of this. This is just a summary version of the aspects so you know what's going on. And now I'm going to go in depth, layer by layer. So not only is this a Leo eclipse on the 3rd of March, right, but it's also the worm full moon, right? So March's full moon is named by the Native American tribes and the colonial settlers for the earthworms that, you know, emerge and come up to the surface as the ground falls, you know, gets less harder after winters freeze in the countries that have winter, right, between, what is it, November and March, yeah, and such as the UK and other places of the world, right? So this full moon, the worm moon, was seen as the last full moon of winter and still is seen in, you know, Native American and other tribes, right? And this is not just gentle folklore, you know, just a tale, it's survival intelligence. The worms emerging meant the earth was workable again. So this is a good, any farmer or grower or you have your allotment or back garden patch knows this is the time to finish, you know, or to start sowing the seeds as planting season is approaching. The freeze is ending and life is returning. But the deeper truth the ancestors knew was the worms don't emerge, you know, come up to the surface because they want to. They, you know, come up to the surface because the conditions that kept them buried, the frozen ground, the hard earth, the cold that made hiding necessary is dissolving, right? And the worms come up because staying underground is no longer sustainable, right? So The alternative names of this moon is the sap moon. This is when tree sap starts flowing again. The crow moon, this is when the crows return. The crust moon, this is when the snow crust melts, right? And all of these names and more all mark the same transition. What was frozen is, thawing out, becoming less icy. It's melting, right? So what was buried is coming out. As I said, this eclipse is putting a spotlight on the hidden. It's the shadow work eclipse, right? And the eclipse at the 19th degree of Leo during the worm moon season carries that emergence, coming up to the surface energy into our emotional bodies. So a question to ask yourself is, what part of you has been buried since you learned that full expression was dangerous? What aspect of yourself have you kept underground because the environment was too harsh, the approval too conditional, the audience too demanding? The ground is thawing, becoming less icy, melting. The conditions that made hiding necessary are dissolving, and like the worms, you're being pushed to the surface whether you're ready or not. The worm moon doesn't ask permission. It names what's already happening, coming up and sowing after a long buried season, right? So it's time to face the music, what you've been hiding, and dance as the sun goes, right? So as I said, this North Node is calling us to the revolutionary us, right? As it goes retrograde on the 3rd of March at 4:38, a few hours before the eclipse, 7 hours before the eclipse, right? In the 15th degree of Aquarius. And the North Node in Aquarius drags us in some cases for some of you, right? Especially those with like a lot of fixed energy, Aquarius energy, Leo energy or Taurus energy, into what terrifies you, being nobody special in service of something larger than your individual sign. Aquarius doesn't care about your personal brand, it cares about collective freedom. It doesn't matter that you want to be the star, right? It wants you to be part of the constellation, and that can feel like death, right? Because for some of you, if you're not special, if you're not shining brighter than everybody else, or for some of you, it's if you shine brighter than everybody else, or they think that you're brighter than them in terms of, they may reject you, because they're used to you playing small. So this energy asks us if we are just one of many. Who even are you, for those of you who are used to being like a big star or centre of attention? And that's the question. Who are you when nobody's watching? Who are you when there's no applause and likes? Who are you when your worthiness doesn't depend on external validation, right? And what we've been moving towards collectively with the North Node in Aquarius is innovation, changing how we deal with each other, respond to the world, and ourselves. Also how we handle collective service, detachment, and revolutionary, thinking out of the box, breaking out of conformity, vision. So it's not following the trend, it's being the trend, but not to get the likes and the applause, but to evolve and help the collective evolve, right? And all this is coming under review. So it's wanting us to go back to retrieve what we left behind. And a lot of us in childhood, we left that self, parts of ourselves that we were told weren't good enough, the parts of us that people said we need to leave behind, right? And all that Leo South Node material, just Leo energy in general, Leo's all about being ourselves, being creative. It's 5th house energy, it's our creation energy, right? So with the South Node in Leo, we have to release the need to be seen, the addiction to lights and applause, the performance of specialness, and the terror of being ordinary. Maybe you're someone who just, nothing's wrong with knitting or handicrafts or anything like that, but maybe you're just someone who likes to chill, but you've been used to putting on a performance. Everybody expects you to be the loud one all the time, the performative one, the extrovert, or what if you're the introvert? Everybody expects you to be the introvert and you really are extrovert, so it's all about, giving up felt the need to be seen, if you're used to that, or allowing yourself to be seen by the right people, because a lot of the times we hide ourselves because we feel we're going to be rejected, right? But the right people will accept us, and to, bring that self-acceptance energy in, to bring the acceptance energy in, we have to accept ourselves, right? That's what I'm trying to say. So, as I said, the moon enters Leo 33 hours before the eclipse, and this gives us enough time to marinate, take everything in, think, ruminate, self-reflect, introspect about everything we've been avoiding, especially about our visibility wound. Then when the North Node goes retrograde, it's saying, actually, we're not done with this yet, Then when the eclipse peaks on the 3rd of March at 11:34, right? This forces the full confrontation, and for some of you it'd be on the day, for some of you it'd be up to 6 months, up until the next eclipse, right? So when the moon moves into Virgo, this is where the work begins, as I said earlier, but we have 30 hours of focused Leo crisis energy to process during the Virgo moon, right? And this isn't just eclipse season, right? Think of it as like a karmic surgery. The North Node going retrograde says we're going back to retrieve the parts of you that you never needed the audience. As I said, it's wanting us to nurture that inner child, that quiet genius, that weird brilliance that didn't perform well, the parts of us that were revolutionary and not Instagram friendly, right? The innovations you abandoned because they didn't get immediate recognition. Those that you left behind, the things, from childhood, people said, don't do this, this is not cool, or whatever, It's saying, go get back those parts of you that you have abandoned, right? Which are you, because we have to express our strengths and weaknesses and all aspects of ourselves. Yeah, you may be a popular person, but you can have a geeky cool side, and that's cool, you can be all, It's time to release the performance and time to step into collective service by, for some of you, as I was saying in the solar eclipse, it'd be serving the collective by doing a podcast, a YouTube channel, whatever, going into a different career, maybe healthcare, whatever, technology, whatever. For some of you, it's about just allowing yourself to be who you fully are, and this is how you help us as a collective raise our vibration, right? So as I said, this lunar eclipse is the karmic reckoning, the judgment are calling us out, right? Lunar eclipse in Leo, and it's the moment when what we've been avoiding about our visibility, addiction, or anything else, gets dragged. It's dragging us out, it's calling us out into the light, of this total lunar eclipse, and there's no escaping this one, right? The call is clear, stop performing, be who you really are. And we've got the South Node, as I mentioned, in Leo, the 15th degree of Leo, and this represents everything we've mastered and everything that's now strangling us, right? You know how to be seen for some of you, or how to be hide, how to perform, putting on a mask of who everybody else wants you to be, whether it's someone who wants to be seen or hide, right? You know how to make yourself likable, watchable, applaudable, or acceptable, If you hide your light and play small, you know how to read a room and become what it needs. You have been doing it for some of you since childhood. As I said, when you learn that visibility equals safety, fitting in, being one of the crowd rather than being that weirdo everybody says is a bit off key and shouldn't be liked because you're not like everybody else, right? So you learn to put on that performance, and you learn that performance equal love, or a narcissistic conformist version of love and acceptance, right? That specialness equals survival, right? Fitting into whatever people thought was special, right? Or for some of you, being someone who's extroverted and who has, a quality that others don't, then that means people accept you. If you were just someone who they deemed as invaluable, then, you wouldn't fit in, or wouldn't accept you if you're in that kind of social circle where it's all about status and money and stuff. But this Leo eclipse asks us, as I said, what happens when the performance is a prison. The Leo South Node isn't about releasing creativity or confidence, it's about releasing the need for external validation as proof of your existence. It's about releasing the belief that if nobody's watching, you're not real. It's about releasing the exhaustive, hard labour of putting on the front right, of being whoever your audience's favourite character, acceptable person, whilst your actual authentic self suffocates, backsays because you hide it, right? The sabin symbol at the 15th degree of Leo is a street pageant, a street performance, like a carnival, right? As a spectacle, visibility as commodity, self as public entertainment. This is what you've been asked to let die, to let go of. As I said, it's telling you to start existing, for your authentic self, not just getting by to be accepted and to just get likes for someone who you're not, right? So now I'm going to talk more about the cosmic dance, the astrology 101 of this lunar eclipse in Leo, right? So the sun's in Aquarius and the moon's in Leo, so the earth in between is perfect alignment. The earth's shadow falls across the moon's face, total darkness where there should be light. The emotional body, the moon, right, is eclipsed by material reality, the earth, whilst the conscious mind, the sun, watches from across the zodiac. This isn't just poetic language, this is actually what physically happens, and psychologically our emotions are being blocked, obscured. What happens at total lunar eclipse? It goes dark, for the places that have it. It's not visible in all areas, right? But metaphorically and astrologically, it forces us into the shadow, right? So we can see our emotions from the outside for once, instead of being drowned by them from the inside. So lunar eclipses are all about endings. They are basically full moons on steroids, right? Emotional peaks where everything you've been hiding, suppressing, repressing comes flooding to the surface, as I said. But unlike regular full moons, eclipses involving the nodes, as this one is, the karmic axis of Aquarius and Leo, right, isn't just random emotional weather, right? It's the accumulated material of your entire soul journey. So, everything to do with our creative, our 5th house, and our 11th house, right? Leo and Aquarius, our collective well-being and our individual well-being and self-love, the self-romance, right? The ways that we speculate and gamble, or the ways that we don't take risks, and the ways this stops us from being who we fully are, right? So the Leo Aquarius axis energy is individual sign versus collective service, right? So as I said, this eclipse sits on the Leo Aquarius polarity, not opposition, it's polarity, two ends of the same truth, right? Leo rules self-expression, creativity, visibility, specialness, heart-centered leadership, the courage to be seen and the need to shine. At its highest, right, it's radiant authenticity and generous leadership, creative power that inspires others, right, to be a leader in their life. It doesn't take the light, it says the light, it brings out the light, right? But in its shadow expression, Leo energy can represent attention addiction, narcissism, performing for applause and likes, needing to be the main character always. Aquarius rules, as I said, innovation, collective consciousness, detachment, revolutionary wisdom and vision, serving the group, being part of something larger. At its highest, visionary leadership, humanitarian service, genius that liberates, sets us free, right? And in its shadow, it's emotional coldness, superiority complexes, detachment as avoidance, revolution without heart. You're being asked to integrate both, not choose but integrate. How do you shine, which is Leo, in service of collective liberation, which is Aquarius, right? How do you matter, which is Leo energy, without needing to be someone who matters more than everyone else. That's Aquarius. How do you be visible, Leo, again, without making visibility your entire identity, which is Aquarius energy? That's the work, and this eclipse is forcing the question by putting the moon, our emotional body, our needs, our inner child in Leo at the south node, what we're releasing, whilst the sun, your conscious will, your identity, your path forward, sits in Aquarius at the north node, you know, where you're heading. Your emotions are screaming Leo theme: see me, validate me, love me, applaud me, give me lights. Your consciousness is demanding Aquarius themes: grow up, serve something bigger, start making everything about you. And that's the friction, right? That's the friction energy, right? So to integrate these energies, right, I'm going to give you a time scale now. So months 1 to 2, so that's March to April 2026, is the recognition phase. Notice where you're still performing, where you still need validation, where specialness is still your drug. Don't judge it, just see it clearly. Months 3 to 4, which is May to June 2026, is your grieving phase, right? Mourn the child who learned that performance kept them safe. Mourn the years you weren't yourself. Mourn the exhaustion of being your own PR team. The grief is sacred. Don't bypass it with, spiritual or other cliches. Months 5 to 6, July to August, this is the integration phase. Begin existing without checking if people are watching and liking. Practice creative expression for its own sake. Practice being who you really are and allowing the right people to come to you and letting those who are not for you fade. Let your leadership be generous instead of desperate. Be visible from fullness, not hunger. September 2026, this is the time of the next lunar eclipse, right? You will know if you've done the work. If you're still performing, you will feel it. If you have been genuinely integrated this energy, you'll notice you don't need the lights and the applause anymore. That's how you'll know, and you just continue the work as the months and the years go on, right? So the gift of this retrograde energy is that we've been given the time, 6 months, to do what most people try to rust in 6 weeks. Actually release what's no longer serving whilst honouring what it gave you. The performance kept you alive. The specialness protected you. Hiding yourself protected you for those who hide yourself, right? The visibility was survival for those who put yourself in the spotlight. But survival strategies that worked at 7 or 27 don't work at 37, they become prisons. The North Node is saying you can leave the prison now, but you have to actually walk out of it, not just announce you're leaving while secretly staying inside because it's your comfort zone, and us humans love our comfort zones. The new is scary, we hate the new, right? But this is our walking out time. Use it well, right? So now I'm going to talk about this lunar eclipse Nakshatra in more focus. So, as I said in the summary, right, the Nakshatra of this, where the moon's at, right, is Parva Falagani, and the ancient story is of the fig tree, the warrior star, and the performance that kills, right? So this eclipse sits in the Nakshatra Parva Falagani, ruled by Venus, spanning 1320 to 2640 of Leo, right, over the 4 padas, and this is in pada 2, and it is known traditionally as the former red one, and Parva Falguni translates also as the fig tree or the front legs of the bed, as well as the former red one, right? And all 3 translations matter. So the deity of this Nakshatra is Bhaga, the god of material bliss, fortune, prosperity, not shallow prosperity. And when I'm changing my accent, it's not like in a disrespectful way. I'm trying to pronounce them in their traditional way, even though I'm failing badly, but that's all what that's about. So the prosperity that comes from union, from 2 becoming 1 without either disappearing, from partnership that amplifies, increases rather than diminishes, rather than, toxic, and, it makes you not be yourself in relationship, you have to walk in exiles, all of that. But the shadow is Bega, was also the god blinded during the sacrifice. He gained fortune but lost sight. The Nakshatra warns us you can have abundance, pleasure, creativity, union, but at what cost, right? What are you not seeing because you're so focused on what feels good? So it's not just to do with money. Sometimes we can overindulge in alcohol and drugs, and I think everything's okay in moderation. Some things are toxic to us, in terms of if we're talking about, some drugs, I'm not going to mention the names, they can be toxic, not good for us, but I'm not the karma police, right? So it's reminding us about doing things in moderation and not excess, not doing too much, right? So the fig tree is reminding us of having deep roots, sweet fruit and hidden labour, the hidden cost of fame and fortune, right? So the fig tree symbol speaks to Parva Pagini's essence, deep roots, sweet fruit, but labour hidden underground, because the tree, we see the beautiful branches or whatever, even with the plants or vegetables, but we don't see the roots if we grow them in the ground, right? And figs don't bloom like other flowers. Their flowers are inside the fruit, invisible. The sweetness you taste requires pollination you never see, Wasps enter the fig, died inside it, became part of the fruit. That's Parva Pagini, the pleasure, the creativity, the union, all built on hidden sacrifice. So it's all about that hard work, that labour. Nobody applauds, give likes to, because they don't see how hard it can be to do certain things, right? But on death, that becomes the sweetness, right? The wasps, eggs, being trapped, and when we say it like that, it sounds a bit but this eclipse asks us, what are you performing on the surface while the real work rots underground? What sweetness are you trying to create without allowing the necessary death, right? What's blooming externally whilst internally you're still waiting for the invisible labour to be recognised, right? The fig tree doesn't perform its pollination. It happens in darkness, in depth, in transformation, without the audience, right? And then the fruit, not because the tree performed, because it allowed the process, right? So it's about allowing ourselves to go through the process of the shadow work and to emerge into our newness, into our authentic selves, right? Also, the imagery of the bed's front legs. This is pleasure, rest, union, or collapse, right? So the front legs of the bed is the most provocative, imagery, it provokes us, it's provocative, the bed, we have pleasure on the bed, we have rest on the bed, we have union, making love, So Parva Polygamy, the symbolism, the bed as place of rest, pleasure, intimacy, creation, a lot of babies are made in beds, right? But the front legs, not all four. The bed is tilted, right, unbalanced. You're resting on instability. And Leo's energy at its shadow is performing relaxation, performing pleasure, performing intimacy, looking like you're resting whilst actually monitoring whether anyone's impressed by how well you rest or how well you're doing, right? Having sex whilst checking if you're good at it, creating art whilst already imagining the applause. That's the front legs only energy. It looks like the bed, it functions like the bed, but it's not stable, right? It's not genuine rest. It's performing rest for an audience that might not even be watching. So, this eclipse says stop tilting the bed, stop doing too much, either commit to actual rest, which requires vulnerability, which requires not performing, or admit you're still on stage even in your most intimate moments, right? And Bhaga, the blinded, fortune without sight. So Bhaga's blindness during the sacrifice is Parva Pagini's warning. You can accumulate fortune, pleasure, creative success and still be blind to what actually matters. How many, people who actually have their south nodes in Leo have achieved visibility, claimed recognition and felt emptier than when they started, right? So I'm a karmic astrologer, so Leo South Node to me represents where your soul was in your last lifetimes or prominent lifetimes, right? So how many people who have made it, have the fame, the money, the status, the cars, the watches, whatever, the jewellery, and realise they were performing for an audience they never chose, seeking approval from people they don't even respect, right? And this is why a lot of people at the top can turn to intoxicating substances and all the rest of it, because it can be lonely, because people are liking a version of them, a character they played, but not seeing the whole them. So, in this Nakshatra, Bhaga gained the wealth, lost the sight, got what he wanted, couldn't see why it didn't fulfill him, make him happy, and all of that, why he was still sad. And this eclipse is offering you the sight through crisis, through the collapse of the performance, right? Through the humiliation of realizing you've been chasing applause instead of authenticity. That humiliation, it's the medicine, it's what restores the sight, right? So, as I said also earlier, the moon is parallel to the fixed star Bellatrix during this eclipse. So Bellatrix in astrology is the female warrior in Orion's left shoulder. So it's in the constellation of Orion, right? It's not gentle, but Bellatrix brings success, yes, but success through confrontation, which works well with the Nakshatra Parva Pagalini, the fig tree, the bedrock imagery, success through facing what we've been avoiding, through warrior energy that doesn't perform strength, it embodies, lives strengths, right? Bellatrix says your success on the other side of this eclipse comes through shadow work, through looking directly at the performance you've been running, through warrior level honesty about where you've been dimming your light, performing, people pleasing, validation seeking. You want success, start performing it, start earning it through the brutal self-honesty that most people can't stomach. Bellatrix doesn't care about your image, it cares about your integrity, and if those two are in conflict, Bellatrix will burn the image to ash so integrity can stand alone, right? That's the gift, that's the terror, that's this eclipse. So I'm going to talk a bit now about the ancestral pattern that this eclipse is putting under the spotlight, right? As I said, the Leo performance energy of the world isn't personal always, it's ancestral. We're taught to perform and to conform to whatever our nations, religions, parents, friends, culture, social media says, right? And it's ancestral energy somewhere in our lineage, on the family level, in our bloodline, our soul line, maybe recent, maybe generations back. Someone learned that performance equals survival, that visibility equals safety, that if you weren't special, you would be abandoned, forgotten, left to die. Maybe it was the child who learned to be entertaining so the alcoholic parent would stay present. Maybe it was the, immigrant who learned to be exceptional so they'd be allowed to stay and accepted by others who were born in the country they immigrated to. Maybe it was, the queer ancestor who learned to be charming so they wouldn't be killed for who they loved. The performance wasn't vanity, it was survival intelligence, and you've inherited it. We all inherited it, right, to fit in and conform, for the conformists out there, but here's what the ancestors need you to know. The conditions that made performance necessary have changed. You are not the vulnerable child anymore. You're not in that life or death situation. The performance that saved them is now strangling you, and the right people for you, whether it be family, and it can be hard with family because do we cut them off? Do we distance them? Do we go no contact? Is that really fair? There's a lot of it going on, especially in Gen Z and millennials, right? Which I belong to, and we're trying to break the generational dysfunction and stuff, right? So yeah, our bloodline is saying, we kept the performance alive, whether it be our relatives that have passed on to their next life in this life, because I believe in reincarnation, or, spirit guides or whatever you've had, is reminding us that now it's time to learn to live without performing, that they've done their part, the performing, and now it's time for you to do your part, which is giving up the performance, completing what many of our ancestors couldn't. We can break this cycle because, we do live in this world, even though we're getting more and more divisive, but we have a lot more freedom of speech, like in the medieval times. Even for me doing this podcast, I'd probably be killed by now, but they didn't have podcasts again, but you get what I'm trying to say. So it reminds us, this Leo lunar eclipse, that we can break the cycle, not by rejecting the performance, that's just spiritual bypassing, but we break the performance by understanding it, right? Why it was necessary, as I said earlier, sometimes we just repress parts of ourselves that maybe did things that we didn't like, maybe we took drugs when we was younger, promiscuous, whatever, we did bad things, maybe, that people were morally wrong and grey and stuff, and we can find it hard to forgive ourselves, right? But we can understand why it was necessary to do things that, we did, and honour what it gave to us, and consciously choosing to pull it away, because we don't need that toxic side or relationship anymore. And that's how we honour our ancestors and our higher self, not by continuing their coping mechanisms, but by completing them and letting go and making new ones, right? So I'm going to finish this section before I talk about, the aspects in depth, and then start talking about the Sabian symbols and, giving guidance for all the 12 sun, moon and rising signs as well, with eclipse phases and timing in a little bit more depth. So we have the pre-eclipse phase, which is 2 weeks before, which is the 17th of February to the 3rd of March, which also, that's when the solar eclipse is on the 17th of February, right? So we can feel the energy coming on the energetic level. So use this time to identify what's about to crack open, journal, notice, don't try to fix anything yet. And then the eclipse window, which is, 3 days either side, so the 29th of February to the 6th of March. This is the peak intensity moment and the energy of the eclipse. The crisis is here. This is when the emotional flooding happens, when the performance fails, when the mass cracks. Don't make major decisions during the peak. Let the chaos, clarify first, self-reflect, think about it. Let the rage out consciously, not unconsciously, getting yourself in all sorts of trouble, being verbal or physically abusive, or allowing others to do that to you. And I know it can be hard when we're in coercive and toxic relationships, but try and reach out for help and leave in a safe way, because a lot of craziness can happen when you're in toxic relationships, when you're about to leave. So do it in a safe way. I know that some of the things I say about letting go and distancing is easier said than done. Everyone's situation is different. The pulse eclipse integration is 6 months from March to September 2026, and that's the real work, right? So we can ask what surfaced, came up during the eclipse that needs to be released, integrated and, transformed, alchemized into wisdom. This isn't instant, as I said, allow yourself to slowly does it, right? Eclipses don't give you answers during the crisis, we have to go through it. They give you the raw material, and then you have 6 months to work with it. So the trigger dates, the 3 months mark, right? So we've got early June 2026, and then the 6 month mark, early September 2026. These are when eclipses, themes reactivate, and we're going to new eclipses. We have a solar eclipse in August, and we have another lunar eclipse in September, right? When we get another hit of the same medicine, when you can measure how much you've integrated and what you need to change. So how this impacts you, the high impact date, when you're proper in it. If you've got a birthday between the 28th of February to the 8th of March, and the sun conjuncts this eclipse within 5 days, right? Or you have Leo or Aquarius rising. The eclipse is on your 1st and 7th house axis, right? Or planets in the 14th to 24th degree of Leo or Aquarius, or, you know, planets aspecting each other that are in Leo or Aquarius, or in the 5th and 11th house, right? Or you have a north node or south node that is transiting your natal sun, moon or rising right now, or you have a current Saturn transit activating, you know, planets in Leo or Aquarius or the 5th and 11th house as well. Median impacts, you'll feel it but won't be destroyed by it if your birthday is the 28th of August to the 8th of September. The sun opposition the eclipse, or Scorpio, Taurus rising. The eclipse is on your 4th to 10th house axis, right? Or if you've got planets in the 14th to 24th degree in fixed signs like Taurus, Leo, Scorpio or Aquarius, or aspects with planets with Taurus in Leo and Scorpio and Aquarius, you have a lower impact. So you may not feel this eclipse if you have the birthday outside of these ranges and no planets in fixed signs, or you have, you know, the eclipse hits your 3rd, 6th or 9th or 12th houses, you know. So even though if you are low impact, if you have any Leo or Aquarius in your chart, as I said, or any planets in fixed signs, any relationship to visible performance, validation themes in your life, this eclipse is speaking to you anyway, you know, it's speaking to us all, so we have to listen, okay? So now I'm going to talk about the aspects that the planets are making on the 3rd of March in this planetary background. We've got a lot of aspects. So we have, as I said, the Leo South Node, where the moon is conjuncting. It's wanting us to give up our performance patterns, where we've been performing for survival, performing being special, seeking external validation rather than trying to get it from within to feel alive. That's what, you know, was once keeping you alive, and now, you know, it's reminding you of the ways it's killing you, the authentic you, your inner child that just wants to come out, right? Then we've got the Aquarius North Node, where the sun's at, right? And this is the evolutionary pull between the Leo South Node and the North Node. And this is our destiny calling. So calling us into our authentic self-expression and working more towards collective service, being ordinary in service of something larger. So, you know, reminding us to put away our ego a little bit if that's what we do, or to step up if we hide, you know, our gifts, and to help those that we can help in a non-toxic way. But there's a split between our conscious will, which is the sun, who chooses evolution and growth, and the emotional body, you know, and our comfort zone, represented by the moon, which is scared of change, right? So it creates this kind of internal war battle, and it's going to take, as I said before, 6 months to integrate this energy. So some essential definitions, what I'm going to talk about aspects, right? So we've got separating aspects, and this means that the aspect has peaked and the energy is delivered, and now it's about integrating this energy, and the planets are moving apart. And then when aspects are applying, if I say they're applying, this means that aspects are tightening, planets moving closer together, and the energy is building up for us to integrate, right? So the moon is our emotional body, our feelings, our needs, our inner child, and the sun's our conscious will, identity, and our path forward, right? So at the time of this Leo eclipse in March, right, the tightest aspects that are being made by the sun and moon is the moon's opposition to Pallas and the sun's conjunction to Pallas, which is an asteroid, right? And these are at 0.31 and 0.3 separating orbs, right? So Pallas in astrology is, you know, the asteroid of wisdom, strategic planning, pattern recognition, looking back at your life and thinking what keeps on repeating, what's good that keeps repeating, what's toxic that keeps repeating, what do I need to let go of? What can I learn from this, right? It's our fighter, warrior intelligence and creative problem solving energy as well. She's the part of every one of us that sees the game clearly, the strategist, the warrior who fights with intelligence, not just force and aggression, right? So the Sun conjunct Pallas in Aquarius is our conscious will being fused, combined with our warrior wisdom. We can see our patterns with crystal clarity where this energy is giving us the power to do so. So we can name the performance, we can name what's going down that's holding us back, right? And identify exactly how, the ways that we've been conditioned that makes us seek external validation or anything negative that we do, right? And see how that pattern works, who installed it, when it was installed, and why it's no longer serving you. And as I said, we've all got different patterns that we fall into. Some of us, it can be being extroverted, pretend extrovertism, right? Seeking the lights and the applause of others. It's hiding our light, not being who we truly are, right? So whatever it is, it's about letting go of what is no longer serving and seeing why it's no longer serving you as well. So the strategic intelligence is wanting us to be present and not blind anymore, right? It's giving us that energy to see what we need to see. And then we've got the moon opposing Pallas from Leo, right? And so this is our emotional body can resist wisdom, our feelings, our need to stay in our comfort zone, not wanting to upset people, because sometimes when we say things need to change, this brings conflict because some other people may not want to change, right? So our feelings can resist what we don't want to see clearly, because clarity demands change, as I said, and change can feel like death when survival has depended on staying the same, right? So this is the tension between knowing and feeling. This is what the conjunction and opposition to Pallas is bringing. So often I do believe, that we all know what we need to do, but it's doing it that's the hard part, right? So the Sun Pallas energy, the performance is killing you, and some of you be able to articulate brilliantly why it's killing you, but understanding, the psychology as well. And, some of you have mapped the entire pattern, right? But the feeling side of you is scared to change because the performance kept you alive once and your emotional body can't tell the difference between past danger and present safety, right? So Pallas in Aquarius brings a revolutionary strategy. She's not interested in small changes, right? She sees systems, how the world and, the whole conditioning system works, not just your individual wound. She sees that the performance pattern is an, personal pathology. It's systematic training in a culture that, commodifies visibility and makes specialness currency, right? And she has a plan. She knows how to dismantle it, to let it go if you're willing to work with this energy. She's already mapped your exit route, right? But the moon in Leo is howling because the emotional body doesn't care about, revolutionary strategy. It cares about survival. And for the emotional body, the performance has been survival, fitting in, conforming in all the many ways that we do it. So as I said, you can explain the patterns that are destroying your life clearly. You can tell your therapist, if you've got one, exactly why you perform for validation, while still checking your phone every 5 minutes to see if anyone noticed you exist, right? The split between understanding and embodiment, living it, between wisdom and the wound, between strategy and feeling, can bring this sort of energy that, makes you tired of fighting, of, strategizing all the time as well, tired of being the one who sees clearly whilst everyone else, including your own emotional body, stays in denial, So this energy can bring breakthrough insights that don't immediately change behavior, seeing the pattern with laser clarity while still being caught in it for some of you, right? Frustration at yourself for knowing better but still performing anyway. And be gentle with yourself, because the realizations that can come with, this combination of solar eclipse, which was 2 weeks ago, and this lunar eclipse, right, can bring out a rage, strategic rage, not blind rage, but focused rage for some of you. But if you don't control it, then it can be blind rage, right? But what you want to do is acknowledge the rage and knowing why you're angry and why and what to do about it. This is, Lilith's rage, which I'm going to talk about, because Lilith, Black Moon, Lilith has the square, right, in the T-square as well. But yeah, so Lilith's rage meets Pallas strategy, and the combination is powerful, dangerous, but necessary. So ultimately, this energy is separating, so it's telling us that you already know what to do, you just have to do it right. The insight is being delivered, now you just have to pull it into your day-to-day life, which is the hardest thing to do, taking what you see and actually doing something with it, right? So ultimately, to integrate this energy, start beating yourself up for knowing what to do if you do, or some of you may feel lost, seek out the help and tools if that's how you feel, but deep down, you can actually know, but you're just scared to confront it as well. So yeah, stop beating yourself up for knowing what to do and not doing it if integration, change does take time, and you have to really give yourself grace for that, because change, especially when we've been born into patterns and we've lived in a system that tells us to conform for, say, you get to 20 years old, that's 20 years of deprogramming you have to do, which could take anything from 10 to 15 years. So be gentle with yourself, but also don't, cop out. Make sure you're taking the steps and getting back up after each fall. So Pallas, and failure. So Pallas gives the wisdom first, living it comes second. This is normal. Write the strategy, actually write it or voice note it. Pallas wants concrete plans, not vague intentions. I will start performing isn't a strategy. I will notice when I'm about to check for validation, pause, ask, who am I doing this for? Then choose differently. That's a strategy, right? Use Pallas to protect your moon, your energy, not attack it. The warrior isn't here to same your feelings. She's here to create conditions where your feelings are safe enough to release the performance. Strategic safety allows emotional release. Practice warrior self-compassion. I see the pattern, Pallas. I understand why I'm still in it, the moon. I'm creating an exit strategy. That's Pallas energy, right? I'm giving myself time to execute it, which is moon energy, and both strategies, ways of being are valid. Let wisdom and feeling have a discussion. They're not enemies. They're two parts of you trying to survive in different ways. Bring them to the table. Let Pallas soul the moon the exit route, right? Let the moon song Pallas how terrified she is. Let them work together instead of being at war with each other. That's integration. That's that aspect gift for you to acknowledge your strengths and weaknesses, to acknowledge your parts of yourself and all your needs, right? And Pallas is giving you the wisdom and the feeling, so let them work together. The other tightest aspect is Saturn's conjunction to Neptune, right? And this is ongoing. So yes, Saturn and Neptune are both in Pisces, doing their on and off conjunction and applying and separating, right? So Saturn brings the structure, the routine, fusing and merging with Neptune, which is all about dissolution, letting go of the performance, right? So Saturn is the structure, routine of performance, the rules and the image. Neptune is the dissolution, the exhaustion, confusion about who you are. To integrate this energy, build spiritual practices with structure, routine, daily meditation, even if it's just for 10 seconds, weekly therapy. Let mysticism have bones, let discipline have soul, right? And then we've got Saturn making a semi-sextile to the midheaven, and this is the fourth tightest aspect. So this is when it allows us to make changes to our public image, our social media presence, our professional lives, whatever, and it shows that we're going to have to make constant changes to align with reality. We can't perform the persona anymore for some of you, especially those with strong, fixed energy. So we're talking like Aquarius and Leo, right, and Taurus in your chart. and also strong 5th house, 11th house and 2nd house aspects in your natal chart as well. So remember that every mismatch, with this energy of Saturn semi-sextile to the midheaven creates tension and uncomfortableness, right? So to integrate this energy, bring public image into alignment with private reality slowly, be instrumental with the changes, so step by step, and that's how you build more honesty into your self-expression, right? And I know in some professions, it can be hard to be who you are. So, in your private life, we should all have a safe place in our private life where we can be who we are. I know sometimes in our careers we do have to wear a bit of a mask to protect ourselves and also to be professional as well. So yeah, so we've got the moon and conjunct the south node, as I said earlier, and the moon opposing the north node as well. So this is at 3.56, separating the moon's conjunction to the south node and opposition to the north node, right? So our feelings, again, being put under the spotlight with how we perform, right, whilst resisting change in our destiny, our authentic self-expression. So moon conjunct the south node is reminding us that our feelings, our needs, our inner child are sort of like playing this performance pattern. We can feel like we need to be special to resist. This isn't, intellectual, it's emotional. Our feelings on the south node are just influenced by, this performance that we need to drop, right, in whatever way you perform. And the moon opposing the north node, once again, is showing us that our emotional body, is actively resisting the Aquarius path, the path of change. And, being one of many can feel like death, because we've been told, to have likes, to be popular on social media or in life means, being alive. But this energy is showing us that, collective service, doing things for the collective, and not giving up self, but to become more of yourself. It's not abandonment, which it couldn't feel like, revolutionary vision without personal recognition can feel like a razor, like you don't exist, right? And opposition means your feelings are pulling you back towards Leo, going for the lights and stuff, but that your destiny is calling you forward to be who you truly are, and to do things because you really want to do them. And yes, this may bring fame and success, but it's opposite to doing things to get the lights, to get engagement and stuff, which goes against who you authentically are, to get engagement by being your true self, sort of thing. So this again adds to the emotional resistance to our soul higher consciousness growth, bringing an eternal war. We can intellectually understand what we need to release, the performance. We have probably read all the self-help books and listened to all the self-help podcasts and all of that, right? But emotionally, you can be terrified to apply what you know, and your inner child is screaming, but if I'm not special, they'll leave me. If I don't perform, they'll forget me and leave me as well. If I'm ordinary, I'll die. For all those who do perform, and for those of you who don't, if I put myself out there, people will reject me. But I believe the right people for you will find you, right? Whatever your terror is, it's real. It's not dramatic. It's survival fear, right? Because for the child who performed or hid themselves, that was survival. The moon on the south node is that child frozen in time, still believing the old rules apply. The north node opposite says the rules have changed, you're safe now, but you actually have to feel that safety, not just know it intellectually, right? And that's what we have to work towards. So by step, day by day, as we heal and learn to live with our psychological, emotional and spiritual trauma, right? So this can manifest as emotional flooding when you try to start performance, anxiety when you don't get validation, panic when you're in situations where you're not the special one, right? And you can have physical symptoms such as your heart racing, shallow breathing, stomach dropping, fight, flight or freeze activation, and the body, the moon thinks you're in danger when you're ordinary. Your nervous system is wired for performance, and this can, bring that feeling that performance equals survival, right? And this eclipse is rewiring that, wanting us to be more authentic, because the world's getting more divisive. My religion's better than yours, my way of life is better than yours, you're to blame for this problem, if you left our country or whatever, things would be great. All of this is going on, right? So it's wanting us to rewire ourselves, through feeling the fear and resisting in a way, meeting and talking to people from different backgrounds and stuff. Sometimes we can just see what the media says about certain people, but never actually get to know them, and for our own selves, and build our own beliefs based on our own experience. And yes, I know sometimes we can have negative experiences with people, but that doesn't mean all people of similar characteristics are the same as well. And we're all human, and we all can make mistakes. And I truly do believe, although, I do understand that some people have severe personality disorders and behaviour issues, and we need proper healthcare and stuff for them, rather than just locking them in prison and systems. We need to, rehabilitate people in the right way. We have to keep ourselves safe. I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, so I understand. But we've been saying that as well, letting the right people in, right? So this aspect, right, the moon conjunct the south node in Leo and the moon opposing the north node in Aquarius is, drawing our attention to rewiring, that need for survival through feeling the fear and resisting and being our true selves anyway. So this energy is separating, so the moon has already peaked its conjunction to the south node, so the worst of the emotional crisis is hitting now around the eclipse, right? And the integration begins immediately after the moon moves into Virgo on the 4th of March, right? This is when we can start doing the work or continuing the work. So ultimately it's about feeling the terror, the fear, without performing through it, and knowledge, that you feel scared of change and you rather stay in your comfort zone. And when the validation seeking panic hits, don't immediately seek validation. Sit with the fear, name it. This is my inner child, fear of abandonment. Breathe through it. Reassure the inner child with evidence, because a lot of the time we're not aware that that's the true cause of our problems. We think it's something else. So yeah, you can reassure the inner child with evidence, such as, I'm an inner child now, I have the resources now, I can exist without being special, or I can, shine my light and not be scared of other people who say that I think I'm better than them and all of that. You can say to yourself, I've proven this already. Remember that time and give a specific example where you exist without applause. Practice micro doses of ordinariness. Start small. Be forgettable in one low state situation and survive it, or be visible in one low state situation for those of you who hide away. Build from there. Your nervous system needs evidence that ordinary doesn't equal death for some of you who think that way, right? Let the moon's journey into Virgo guide you. Allow the eclipse to, reveal what needs to be revealed, right? And, follow the practical energy of Virgo that brings less drama, more work and less performance, more processes, right? As we move into the 4th and 5th of March. So the sun is also opposing the south node and making a conjunction to the north node. So this allows our conscious will to be aligned with our destiny, right? And our conscious awareness, our sense of self, our identity is being called to turn away from the performance pattern, which we can know is killing us because it's suppressing the real us, and the conforming and performing specialness that's making us feel empty and hollow, right? And we can know that the external validation is not enough, because after we get one like on social media or one heart, whatever, we want the next, right? Always wanting constant more to feel kind of validated. So this, the sun conjunct the north node and opposing the South Node is wanting us to make the conscious choice, because the Sun decides, unlike the Moon energy, what makes us feel right. The Sun is deciding, no more, I'm done with performing, right? Our will, our identity, our path forward is wanting us to be more collective in our service, doing things for the advancement of humanity rather than just the advancement of ourselves. We can advance ourselves, of course, we need to hit goals, and our own goals, though not what the world tells us to do, but also be reminded that we're part of something bigger, and our consciousness wants us to grow even if our emotions resist it and wants us to stay in our comfort zone, right? So the Sun here is choosing growth, evolution, and our emotions can still cling to what's familiar, and this creates the split that we experience day to day, right? Our head often knows and our heart can resist, or sometimes our heart knows, and our head can resist the logic, right? So as I said, a lot of you can clearly state where things ain't working. You can see the pattern, you understand the dysfunction, but it's hard for you to actually do things about it, right? You have probably even told others about your journey to authenticity, but then you catch yourself still checking Instagram and other social media for validation and think, why am I like this? Be gentle, because as I said, patterns are hard to break, right? And you're not broken, you're just experiencing the lag time, if you want to call it, the delay, when you're waiting at the airport for your flight, between consciousness, which is the Sun conjunct the North Node, already there, and the emotional, the Moon conjunct the South Node, not there yet, right? So the parts of you that are ready for change and the parts of you that are not. So this eclipse is forcing all the parts of you to sync up, right? So this can manifest as making a conscious decision to start performing, quitting jobs that require you to be on all the time, ending friendships based on performance, choosing creative projects that don't need to be impressive, following your own sort of like needs and finding your audience, instead of thinking, oh, this YouTuber, this podcast does this or that, I have to do it this way. Of course, use them as a blueprint, but if need be, but also add your own spin. Just don't quote and try and be someone you're not when you're not like that, right? So this energy wants us to speak truths that might make you less likable, and you can just feel burned out as well, because the exhaustion of knowing what you need to do but feeling like it's not safe enough to do it can be really tiring, right? So the frustration of intellectual understanding without emotional integration, right? So again, like the Moon energy, this energy is separating. So as I said, a lot of the time we know what we need to do, it's actually doing it. So the conscious choice is made. Now comes the months of emotional integration to catch up with where the consciousness has already gone. So trust that the consciousness is leading you to the correct path for you, right? And we've all got different paths, and the Sun, your Sun, the Sun energy at the time of this eclipse is giving us the way to move forward, even if our Moon, our comfort zone is scared and need of us, the side of us that wants to stay small, right, and in our comfort zone because of fear of the unknown. I don't know the new, I only know this, right? So let the intellect light the path whilst your emotions catch up. Make conscious choices before emotional readiness. You'll never feel ready to start performance, but do it anyway. Small steps, your emotions will follow one day, that they see you have survived. And that's the thing, sometimes we rush ahead and just think I never get there, but it's about the daily doing, and the change will come sometimes like a surprise. All you have to do is keep on trying, getting back up after many failures, which I've done, and I can vouch for this method. You don't have to feel ready to do it, just do it anyway. So use the Sun's Aquarius energy of detachment, objectivity, looking at yourself, in an objective way, seeing yourself as part of a larger pattern. When emotions overwhelm, step back, observe, that's my part of me that wants to cling again, that's suspected, and just say to yourself, I'll keep walking forward anyway. And the Sun-Moon integration is the eclipse work. These two aspects together, Moon on the South Node and Sun on the North Node, are milder central tension. Integration happens when your feelings catch up with your consciousness, and that takes time, so give it 6 months, and then, month in, month out as well. As I said, it can take 10 to 15 years just to break 20 years of programming, so be gentle with yourself, right? Okay, so now I'm going to talk about their applying aspects, right? So these are the planets that are moving together or still close together, right? So we've got the Sun making a conjunction to Mercury and the Moon making an opposition to Mercury at 7.35 to 7.37 applying. So this again is reminding us of the mind-heart split that will intensify over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So we're talking up until around March the 24th, right? So Mercury, our thinking, communication, rationality, is caught in the crossfire between the Sun conscious will and the Moon, the emotional body, right? So the Sun's conjunction to Mercury in Aquarius again reminds us that our conscious mind is being merged or is merged with revolutionary thinking. We can see the dysfunction clearly, as I said, we can articulate the problem, we understand intellectually why performance doesn't work, and our thoughts can be aligned with Aquarius innovation, detachment and collective consciousness. The Moon opposing Mercury from Leo again is showing us that our emotions are opposing our rational mind. What we feel contradicts what we think. Our heart wants validation even though our head knows it's hollow, it's not right, it leaves us empty, worthless and numb, right? Our inner child may need to be special because that's what it was taught, be a good child for our parents or caregivers, whatever you were told, right? Even though your intellect sees specialness as a trap because you have to keep on doing things to keep up with the label of being special, right? And this is the classic mind-heart split played out cosmically, consciousness and thinking versus our emotional body, logic versus feeling, as I said earlier, and what makes sense versus what we need, right? So as I said, your psychological expression of this can be, I know I should stop seeking validation, but I feel like I die without it. The knowing is the Sun, Mercury in Aquarius. The feeling is Moon in Leo opposing that knowing. You can find yourself having internal arguments, like your mind can be like, their opinion doesn't matter. Your heart can be like, but I need them to like me. Then your mind chimes in again and be like, I don't need to be special. Then your heart comes in again and says, but if I'm ordinary, I'm nothing. And this split creates agony. You're being pulled between two parts of yourself that are both valid but incompatible. So this can manifest as analysis paralysis, right? You understand your patterns intellectually, Mercury, but can't change them emotionally, which is the Moon. You talk about doing the work without actually doing it because thinking about change feels safer than feeling through change, right? And this can lead to communication breakdowns. You say what you think you should say with Mercury, with Sun energy, whilst feeling something completely different, which is Moon opposing Mercury. People sense like the disconnect, right? You can seem off. So the mind-heart split can intensify before it resolves, right, over the next 6 months. So use this time, right, to bridge the gap between your heart and mind, not widen it. Stop trying to think your way out of emotional patterns. You can't intellectualize feelings into submission. Mercury can understand the Moon, but it can't override it. Create dialogue between mind and heart. Literally write 2 letters, mind to heart. Here's what I understand logically. Heart to mind. Here's what I need emotionally. Let them speak to each other instead of fighting each other, right? Allow yourself to, confront the parts of you that you hide, and this is when true healing, can begin. And when analysis kicks in, stop, drop into your body, ask, what am I actually feeling right now? Let the answer come from sensation, not thought. Trust that integration takes time. The Sun, Mercury got the memo first, Aquarius consciousness. The Moon takes longer, Leo emotion is slower to change. The applying orb means they're moving towards alignment. It's happening, be patient. So the Moon sextile Jupiter and the Sun trine Jupiter is also happening at the time of this eclipse. It's aspect mad. There's lots going on. Well, what I chose to, mentioned, because I see that all of these are intricately, coming together to work, or we need to pay attention to them. So we've got the moon sextile Jupiter and the sun trine Jupiter at 2.7 to 2.17 applying, right? So different harmonies, same grace building, right? So both luminaries are receiving, harmonious, good aspects from Jupiter, but different harmonious aspects, sextile versus trine, and this matters. So moon sextile Jupiter is our emotions are being offered support for growth. The sextile 60 degrees aspect is all about effort that pays off. So we have to use this energy. Sometimes it can, if we don't use it, then we lose it, right? So we have to reach for the emotional growth that Jupiter is offering, and it's available. We just have to take it, right? We have to reach for it, right? It's not automatic. And the sun's trying to Jupiter allows our consciousness to flow easier into growth, right? So this is supporting growth. Trine energy is effortless flow, right? So it comes anyway. And sometimes people with lots of trines in their natal chart cannot use the energy because it comes naturally. Like some people, they have trines, things come easily, so they don't try, which can be a good thing. Life can be more easy if you've got lots of trines in your chart, but sometimes we have to apply ourselves, right, to get the benefit of trine energy. That's what I'm trying to say. So our awareness can naturally grow towards Jupiter's energy of faith, optimism, meaning, philosophy, and seeing the bigger picture, right? Both of these aspects create different experiences of the same blessing. So for our emotions, the moon sextile allows us to see that growth is possible but requires work. You have to actively choose faith over fear. You have to consciously reach to be optimistic and believe in hope, right? Especially with the world the way it is, right? When our emotions want to spiral, it reminds us that growth, expansion is available, but only if you take it, right? You have to do the things, take the small daily steps to understand yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, and heal and manage and learn to live with your emotional, psychological and spiritual trauma, right? For our consciousness, the sun's trine to Jupiter allows growth to flow naturally. We can spontaneously see the bigger picture. For some of you, it can be light and bold realization of the things you need to do to move forward. Understanding can come really easier, then the growth can be automatic. Our consciousness just can naturally elevate during this time, so we can have moments of genuine optimism, breaking through crises, sudden insights that change everything. That's what this is about, kind of energy, aha moments, and our clarity. What we understand can change in a moment and change our entire perspective, So for years you could be stuck in a pattern and you're like, am I ever going to stop this? And this energy can really just bring changes and shifts, and this is what you should use these the solar eclipse and lunar eclipse energy for. So our emotions can, allow us to feel hope and faith, that slowly returns after the eclipse energy floods us, so 48 hours almost after eclipse, or up to 6 months afterwards. Don't be like, oh, this isn't working because I'm not feeling hopeful straight away. No, it can take up to 6 months or a bit longer, so this trine allows you to absolutely choose to have faith, not force it, but actually feel it. If you reach for it, and accept Jupiter's gift and meet it halfway, you can understand the meaning in the crisis without effort. You can understand why sometimes we have to go through the hard times, learning to take the rough with the smooth, but not in a toxic way, in a way that, empowers you. The bigger picture can become obvious, the pattern can clarify, the purpose can reveal itself naturally to you, opportunities that support your North Node journey can appear, teachers and mentors can show up at exactly the right time, books, podcasts, conversations that give you what you need to hear, communities can form that don't require you to be special to belong. But the shadow of this energy is spiritual bypassing. Jupiter can inflate everything and anything, right? this can include you avoiding things. Don't use faith to skip grief. Don't use optimism to bypass rage, you know. You can still be optimistic and rageful and upset, you know. Don't use everything happens for a reason to avoid feeling what needs to be felt. Jupiter's gift is growth, the capacity to feel, not escape from feeling. Use it to expand your ability to hold the pain, not to pretend the pain isn't real, but to work with the pain and to work on, grow, to progress in spite of the pain and the obstacles, right? So as I said, this energy is applying, tightening over the next 2 to 3 weeks, and it builds hope and grace, and the support intensifies. So this is energy we can tap into, you know. And I believe the aspects, why I do aspects and the sabin symbols and go in depth, because the energies that are happening at the time of these astrological events, right, stay with us for the whole 6 months, right, up into the September eclipse, right? So this growth becomes available. So yeah, use this window, this time, to take risks that you wouldn't normally take, right? So to integrate this energy for emotional growth, the moon sextile, right, to Jupiter, make the effort. When despair, you know, fear hits, consciously choose one optimistic thought or option. When fear dominates, actively reach for one faithful action. Jupiter rewards the reach, you know, the trying, the getting up after each failure, right, the persistence. For conscious growth, you know, the sun's trying energy, trust the flow. When insights come, don't dismiss them. When understanding arrives, receive it. Jupiter is giving you this, don't reject the gift. Let consciousness, Sun, trine Jupiter, lead emotions. The moon sextile Jupiter into growth, right? Your mind can sow your heart that growth is safe. Your understanding can reassure your feelings. Allow them to work together. You know, they don't have to compete. This is the beautiful of this trine and sextile to Jupiter that the sun and the moon's making, right? So this is grace, this is blessing in the middle of crisis, you know, this is hope. The universe is offering support. Take it, use it, let Jupiter's faith carry you when your own faith fails, right? And then you've got the sun making a quintile to Uranus, so this is a nice creative genius aspect. So this can bring sudden insight, so it's working with that breakthrough energy that just click. It brings disruptive clarity that can help us, you know, get out of our comfort zone, creating space for randomness and newness. And you know, when this breakthrough energy comes, don't dismiss it. It's supporting us to live newness, right? And reminding us that Uranus in Taurus wants physical change, practical change, right? There's also a sun making a trine to descendant. So this is allowing us to, you know, show up naturally as ourselves, supporting our authentic self-expression, giving us the release in our personal identity crisis. Let this energy carry us into our new identity, which is actually our authentic identity. Notice what feels easy and, you know, allow this energy to work through you. We've also got some separating aspects. So I said earlier, you know, when I was talking about Palace, that black moon Lilith is bringing the rage, right? So this is separating energy. The energy is being delivered. It's time to integrate this now. So the moon square to black moon Lilith, and the sun is making a square to black moon Lilith as well at 4.43 to 4.45 degree orb, separating. So this is like rage from all directions, right? So the moon squaring Lilith and the sun squaring Lilith reminds us that the rage has peaked, right? Now it's time to integrate this energy, right? Both the sun and the moon are squaring Lilith in Scorpio from different angles. The moon from Leo, the sun from Aquarius. Lilith in Scorpio is receiving pressure from both sides, and this is happening at the same time. So simultaneous rage activation in our emotional body, represented by the moon, and our conscious will, represented by the sun, right? So our feelings are angry, our identity is angry, all of us can be angry, right? And we're supposed to be. The black moon, Lilith, the lunar apogee, the point where the moon is furthest from the earth, she represents what's already been exiled, what's already been, our personality traits that our parents said we shouldn't do, or people said we can't do, why we conform, the parts of us that we have rejected as well, right? Where we've been taught that, being our authentic self is too much. And yeah, for some people it may be, but for the right people, it can be, as long as it's not a performance. Sometimes people can be like doing too much to get attention, right? So Lilith is reminding us of the parts of us that we have suppressed, bottled up, denied, buried, performed a way to be acceptable, right? So Lilith holds our rage at having to perform for survival, our fury at being taught, that authenticity wasn't enough, our anger at everyone who took our performance or our weakness, our kindness for weakness, that's the right way, and never saw the person underneath, our wildness, the untamed, ungovernable, the part of us that is unapologetic us, right? The energy that we've been dimming so others feel comfortable. Lilith in Scorpio is rage that transforms. It's not performative rage, not rage as a spectacle, as look at me being rageful online so I can get likes and all of that. It's actual rage that burns through the bullshit, sees power dynamics clearly, refuses to play nice when playing nice means self-abandonment. And I'm not promoting, not caring about others' needs, right? That's not what it's all about. But I love the time, a lot of things I believe I've done. Of course there's things that are wrong, like we shouldn't harm others or harm ourselves, right? But it all comes down to us not being allowed to be in ourselves and trying to fit in to what other people tell us to be, right? And then we get upset with ourselves when we're not being what others want us to be, rather than embracing our true self, right? So square energy creates friction, tension, forced confrontation. This is confrontation, arguments coming up in relationships even if we've been avoiding them, and both the moon and sun are being forced to deal with Lilith. So, we can't avoid that energy anymore, right? What Lilith represents, which is our hidden feelings, our, contained anger, right? We can't keep performing while she screams in the basement. The eclipse is unlocking that basement door, right? So we can have, on the psychological expression level, sudden eruptions of anger that surprised you with their intensity in others, right? Rage at people, situations that shouldn't make you this angry but do. Fantasies of burning your entire life down and starting over. The impulse to say, fuck this, and quit everything. That rage isn't pathology, it's truth. It's your system finally, your body, your mind, your heart, whatever, acknowledging how much the performance has cost you, how exhausting it's been, how much of yourself you've had to hide, exile to maintain likability. So we're talking about unapologetic space taking, just being like, I'm going to be here, right? So it can manifest as suddenly you're too loud, too much, too honest, too real for people who preferred your performance. And instead of, drinking for some of you, going backwards and just being what they want you to be, you refuse. And that refusal, that's Lilith, that's your wildness, that's the part of you that knows performance is a prison. The sadder expression of this is rage as performance. Like I said, performing rage, right? Don't perform being angry to prove you're doing the work. Don't make your rage into a new brand. Lilith's rage is private first, public maybe later. Feel it fully before you speak it. Let it move through you before you weaponize it, right? Relationships can end, that's what can manifest due to this, because you're no longer willing to perform for peace. Jobs can be quit because you can't pretend to care about things that don't matter. And again, think before burning your own house down, your whole house, right? But for some of you, this may be the only way you get outside your comfort zone, but obviously, bills and other things, so think carefully, right? Don't be impulsive. So, you can also do creative work, design, write poetry, I know, create a song, whatever else creative, right? That's raw, unpolished and real instead of created. Social media posts that don't check if they're on brand before posting. You can also enforce boundaries, because Lilith doesn't negotiate boundaries. She states them and enforces them. No becomes a complete sentence. I don't owe you an explanation becomes your mantra. People who were used to your accommodating performance will not like this. Let them not like it, So the rays, of the squares from Black Moon Lilith to the Sun and the Moon has peaked during their squares, right? They're separating now. This happened, the prime aspect happened days before the eclipse. Now it's all about integrating, right? The rays has been activated. Now you direct it, you channel it, you use it, right? So stop being afraid of your own rage. It's not going to destroy you. It's going to liberate you, free you, but only if you feel it without performing. Find private ways to move the rage. Screaming in your car. I like this one. I do this often. Maybe not often enough, but I like that one. Rage writing that you burn afterwards. Physical movement like Tai Chi, yoga, mad dancing, just going crazy with the movements, yo. And let the anger express through your body. Hitting pillows, intense exercise, do banging them weights, chaotic dancing, as I said. Let Lilith move through you before you speak to her. Practice saying no without justification. Start small, such as no, I can't make that meeting. Don't explain why. Notice that the world doesn't end. Notice people might be uncomfortable. Notice you survived their discomfort. Build from there. Identify where you're still performing niceness and people pleasing whilst raging internally. That split is making you sick. Either speak the rage if it's safe, of course, or leave the situation if it's not safe to speak, because sometimes, especially in coercive and other relationships, you have to make a plan. So, safety and physical safety is paramount, right? Stop staying in spaces where you have to express Lilith to survive, but leave them in the safest way possible for you. Reclaim too much as enough. Remember, the right people for you won't see you as too much. They will see you as just being you. Remember, you're enough. You're not too much. You've been in spaces too small for those of you who've been hiding yourself. Find bigger spaces. Find people who can handle your full intensity without you having to dim. They exist. Lilith will help you find them. Remember, the rage is sacred. It's not the problem. The performance that suppressed, hid the rage is the problem. Let Lilith burn through that performance. What remains on the other side is you, whole, unedited, unapologetic, finally. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk about the long-term aspects that are happening at the time of this Leo eclipse. So we've got Neptune making a sextile to Pluto, and this is 327 applying. So this brings spiritual practices that actually transform. Long-term commitment can take years, right? So it allows us to, really tap into our higher consciousness. Neptune is 12th house as well, sextile in Pluto, so transforming, the hidden things we keep from ourselves, our addictive habits. Maybe it's addiction to intoxicating substances or toxic relationships, right? And it reminds us that change takes years, right? And then we've got Saturn making a sextile to Pluto. So this reminds us that transformation, change requires long-term commitment, right? So commit to the long game, set sustainable practices for 6 months, 12 months, 5 years, 10 years, And a lot of the time this is why we give up, because we don't see how, and we don't give ourselves respect and the time and the space that change can take a while, and we can compare ourselves to others' journeys that, are probably performing, being happy and being, stable in life anyway. So it's very important to be authentic in your self-expression, and this is what Saturn square to the ascendant at 4 degrees 41 is supporting us as well, and Uranus is square to the midheaven is allowing us to allow people to see us and supporting us being authentic and to build a public image in a way that attracts the right people to us. Because as I said, I believe everyone's got their niche. Yeah, there may be a million people doing the same things you are, you know, but there's people that will only listen to you or only engage with your personality, right? And then we've got Pluto making a semi-sextile to the midheaven. So power dynamics can come up in relationship, they can be more visible, and we can see whether people are visible for power, or are we, you know, we're hungry and, you know, because we're not stepping into our self-empowerment as well. So it puts a spotlight, Pluto semi-sextile to the midheaven, to, you know, power dynamics that go on in our careers and our public image. So ultimately, to integrate this energy that these aspects are bringing, immediately the next 2 weeks after eclipse, the moon enters Virgo on the 4th of March, and this is the time to do the practical work, to continue or start taking daily steps to change the things you want to change. Because remember, what we want to change is going to be unique. For some of you that have been dimming your light, you're going to want to step out into the spotlight. For others that have been performing a personality to get likes and engagement, you know, you may want to step away from all of that, you know, become more private. Then 2 to 3 weeks during, you know, after the eclipse, you know, the energies are supporting us, right? And it's time to take bold, courageous action during this time. Over the next 6 months, you know, integrate all of the aspects, energy that I said, you know, allow your emotions to catch up with your consciousness. And, you know, long term, over the next 1 to 5 years, you know, the Saturn, Pluto, endurance, sustainability, making strategic plans. Remember, Palace, wisdom, strategic thinking is the tightest aspect of this lunar eclipse, right? Allowing ourselves to transform the way that we deal with our, you know, addictive 12th house stuff, you know, change and transformation and comfort zone in general evolve, right? So yeah, that's the end of the aspect analysis. But also at the time of this lunar eclipse, we've got some aspects, transiting aspecting patterns. As I said, we've got a T-square at a 22% orb, and we've got 2 false hammers at 25% and 9% orbs, and then we've got 3 stelliums. So I'm going to tell you what all that means, right? So the main theme of these transiting patterns, right, is that we're being confronted, you know, we're being molded and refined. They're helping us to change with Thor's hammer and all of these aspects, you know, kind of hammering us from multiple directions at the same time until, you know, the false parts of us, our false expression, breaks away and only the truth remains. And like I said, this may take a year for some of you, or a month. Some of you may have instant recognition and realizations and change, burning your whole life down to start something new. And as I said, you know, go at your own pace, don't compare your journey to anyone's else. So we've got the T-square, so the raise release valve. So this is between the moon and the south node in Leo, opposing the sun palace and the north node in midheaven in Aquarius. Both sides square black moon Lilith, which is at the peak, the apex, right, in Scorpio at 22% orb. This is wide energy, you know, this aspect of T-square, but active, and this builds pressure, you know, for us to make the change that we need to change. So the opposition base is, you know, reminding us once again of our emotional need for validation, the moon in Leo, versus our soul's growth pattern towards collective service, which is the sun in Aquarius, right? So the personal versus the transpersonal, individual sign versus revolutionary vision, you know, one has to give. So at the, you know, the peak, the black moon Lilith in Scorpio is the release valve. You know, remember I told you the rage, right? The only place pressure can discharge. And your release valve, you know, the rage you weren't allowed to express, the wildness you tamed to be accepted, the too much energy you dim so others feel comfortable, the part of you that you hid because it threatened the performance. You know, you were told not to show yourself, maybe from a child or maybe friends, your partner, you know. So Lilith's rage is what transforms. It doesn't destroy, it alchemizes, it you know, forces us to change. It sees power dynamics clearly, it names them, it refuses to play nice when nice means self-abandonment, right? So this T-square is saying the tension between validation needs, right, the moon and Leo energy, and our evolutionary, our path of growth and true self-expression, sun and Aquarius, can only be resolved through our rage, right? Not performing resolution, actually raging at the system that made you believe specialness equals survival, raging at the conditioning, raging at everyone who took your performance and never saw the person, raging at yourself for continuing long after you realized it was killing you. That rage is your medicine, your release valve, how you break the pattern. So the trick here is that Lilith's rage isn't performative. It's not let me show you how angry I am so you will validate my pain. It's actual raw, ungovernable fury and rage that doesn't care if anyone's watching. That's what scares you, because if you actually let yourself feel that rage without performing it, you don't know what you'll do, who you become, if anyone will love you afterwards. This eclipse says find out, let that rage move through you, see what's on the other side. And spoiler alert, it's freedom, but you have to earn it through the fire, through the rage, through the confrontation, right? And then we've got, you know, Force Hammer number 1, and this is the partnership pressure at a 25% orb. So we've got Juno at the apex in Sagittarius, sextile squared by Chiron. So Juno's asteroid, Chiron's asteroid, Chiron's in Pisces, Kevis is in Aries, and the South Node is in Leo, all at 155 degrees to Juno, creating restless irritation around partnership. So Juno is committed partnership, is being hammered from 3 directions. Chiron in Pisces, that is saying, I can save you, you know, the wound, the solution, the martyrdom, the sacrificing yourself for others. Then there's Keris in Aries, is actually, I need to focus on myself energy, nurturing versus independence. And the South Node in Leo is, but if I don't perform for you, will you leave? And what's being hammered is our relationships, as this energy is allowing us to get real about our relationships during this eclipse, right? So specifically our pattern of performing for our partner's approval whilst our actual needs go unmet, right? Maybe you've been there entertaining partner, the likable partner, the low maintenance partner, the partner who makes things easy, who doesn't rock the boat, who keeps things light. You know, you've been performing the good partner, whatever it is you've been doing, whilst your actual needs have gone and met, right? And the message here is that committed relationships can no longer operate on the performance model. You can't keep performing the good partner whilst abandoning yourself. You can't keep choosing partners who need you to be special and therefore need you to stay small enough so you don't threaten them. The hammer breaks what's false, and Juno is being forced to redefine what partnership even means when you stop performing and start assisting. If they love your performance and not you, the relationship will struggle when you stop. If they love you, the authentic you, the relationship deepens when you stop. This eclipse clarifies which is which, you know. Do they love you or do they love the performative you know? And of course, you know, I just want to say as well, we can all put in a performance, right? And there's nothing wrong with sometimes having fun, but sometimes people can love the performance and we can become the performance, abandoning who we truly are and never having a healthy outlet to be our true self, so we're not feeling loved in the right way and supported in the right ways, and we're not, you know, allowing ourselves to love ourselves for who we authentically are. You know, we're suppressing our true needs, and we need to, you know, have an outlet with ourselves and others where we can truly be ourselves. So the second force hammer is, you know, the Leo compression, and this is a tight orb. So the South Node is at the apex, Leo, being sextile squared by Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio and Chiron in Pisces. So it's active, it's immediate, and it's unavoidable, right? And this is, you know, we've got Lilith in Scorpio bringing that hidden and rage and wildness. The South Node in Leo is being, hammered by Lilith in Scorpio and Chiron in Pisces. That's bringing that spiritual, emotional wound around sacrificing and being a martyr and visibility. So what's being compressed is everything you perform to avoid rejection. Every time you've dimmed yourself so others felt comfortable. Every moment you chose likability over authenticity. Every relationship where you perform instead of resisting. And the South Node is crossed between Lilith's rage and Chiron's wound. Nowhere to hide. The performance can't protect you anymore. Lilith's burning it down from one side, Chiron's dissolving it from the other. You're in the middle, being compressed until only truth remains right. This isn't gentle, this is refinement, improvement, fine-tuning, right? Metal under the hammer, being saved through force because gentle methods fail. You try to release the performance softly, you try to evolve gradually, you try to do this without crisis, right? So Force Hammers number 2 is saying crisis anyway, because compression works when coating doesn't, it's wanting to make things so tight that you don't have anywhere to hide, right? Because sometimes, as I said earlier, our comfort zones. So in terms of integrating the 4 hammer energy, right, months 1 to 2 we can feel the hammering, the change. Don't numb it, don't perform it, perform processing it and all of that. Actually feel it, feel the rage, the wound, the exhaustion of performing, the terror, the fear of stopping and getting outside of your comfort zone. Months 3 to 4, so we're talking now like June and July. Identify what's breaking versus what's bending. Breaking false performance, addiction to validation, the need to be special. Allow yourself to be actually creative, creativity that comes from your genuine self-expression, step into genuine leadership, of yourself and anything else, may decide to start a business or whatever. Allow yourself to be authentic in your self-expression, as I said, and remember that, actual creativity, genuine leadership and authentic self-expression bend under pressure, but they don't break, right? But you need to break the false performance, addiction to validation, and the need to be special in months 5 to 6, so we're talking like August, September. Hopefully you start integrating this energy so you can create. You should be creating without checking if people are watching. When you can be visible without needing the visibility to mean anything. When your worthiness comes from being alive, not from being special. That's the other side of the change, right? Not the performance, but the presence. Not specialness, but substance, right? Not validation, but truth. So remember, the hammering creates who you're meant to be, the change, right? The refinement, the molding, the hammer is like the welder's tool or the forger's tool in, blacksmithing and all of that. So, allow yourself to be molded into the true you and not run from the true you as well, right? So as I said, we've got 3 stelliums, right? So we've got stellium 1 between Venus, Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. So again, it's bringing dissolution, change energy. So Venus is bringing love, beauty, values around relationships. So allowing for relationships to be changed in a loving way. Saturn is bringing structure and routine and discipline, limitation, but reality, the realness of what it takes to be who you truly are, right? So we've got Neptune also in stellium 1, bringing the spirituality, the ability to transcend, go beyond, and the boundarylessness and the mysticism, right? So our love is being dissolved and restructured at the same time. Venus wants a partnership, Saturn wants commitment. So this allows us to get real if you're in an existing relationship. As I said, with the 4's hammer, sort of like bringing out the truth. Are we loving each other for who we really are? Just the performance, just the status, right? And of course, we've all got different relationships and rules to our relationships. If everybody's happy with the agreements, I know not everybody's together for love or whatever, and everyone's involved is perfectly happy with that arrangement, but just make sure whatever arrangement you're in that you are happy, right? So Neptune wants union as oneness, and all three of them are in Pisces, so it reminds us of love that transcends, goes beyond boundaries, but also needs discipline so it doesn't become codependent. So maybe you've been performing love, performing being a good partner, performing relationship whilst your actual feelings have dissolved, changed into resentment or numbness or exhaustion, as I said. And this stellium once again supports us and asks us to, think about what does love look like when you're not performing it? What does partnership look like when you actually show up authentically instead of, accommodating and sacrificing yourself? And of course we need to accommodate, we can do that as part of love, but we shouldn't lose ourselves in the process, right? So this stellium is bringing our attention to what we accommodate in, and is it healthy? Can you have a Venus, relationship with Saturn, boundaries with Neptune, transcendence all at once? The shadow of this energy is performing spirituality, sacrificing yourself just to, because you're afraid of getting outside of your comfort zone, using, the Piscean, disillusion, spiritual energy to avoid Saturn responsibility. Also, codependence that's disguised as soulmate connection, such as I lose myself in you, presented as romantic when it's actually self-abandonment. To integrate this energy, build relationships that allow mysticism, spirituality, Neptune energy, right, to be expressed through authentic connection, represented by Venus, with boundaries, which is represented by Saturn, right? Love that's both transcendent and grounded. Partnership that includes spirit and reality, right? Heart and mind, logic and illogic. I can't think of the opposite of not being logical, so yeah, choose one, integrate all three, right? And then we've got the second stellium between the Sun, Pallas and the North Node in Aquarius. So this is Sun, our conscious will and identity, our path forward, and Pallas, as I said. Pallas brings strategic pattern recognition, warrior intelligence, and the North Node where we're heading, right? So this is our true blueprint forward, this stellium supporting our conscious will and with our warrior wisdom, and allowing ourselves to step into collective service and our authentic self. It's allowing us to know the path, see the strategy, and have the wisdom. This stellium gives us everything we need to intellectually make this Leo to Aquarius transition, right? This performative to being who we are as an individual. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus energy in some systems, Saturn and Uranus rules Aquarius, right? So going from fixed fire to fixed air, true self-expression. The only thing that can be missing for some of you is the emotional integration, because we've got the moon making an opposition from Leo, right, to the stellium in Aquarius. So our mind is ready, but our heart needs time. Shadow of this energy is using Aquarian detachment to avoid feeling, performing a revolution while staying emotionally stuck. Spiritual bypassing disguised as evolved consciousness. I am beyond needing validation, performed as identity while secretly, starving for recognition. So to integrate this energy, let your revolutionary wisdom, represented by the stellium, include your emotional reality, which is the moon in Leo. Don't bypass it, right? And a strategy that honors your feelings as well as your logic, right, is called for. Innovation that doesn't leave your heart behind. Aquarius evolution that brings Leo creativity with it instead of abandoning it. The goal isn't to kill, the Leo's fire side of you. It's to integrate Leo with Aquarius sign, which is Leo energy, in the service of liberation, freedom, which is Aquarius. Be creative, represented by Leo energy, that serves the collective in a way that serves the collective, that's Aquarius, right? And visibility, being out there, being a bit like, hey, look at me, as a byproduct of useful work, authentic work, which is Aquarius, not as the goal itself, right? So it's not about, saying, oh, people can't like me, and, getting getting lights or whatever, but it's about not performing to get the lights. It's about being authentically who you are, so the lights are authentic, right? And you know, in the, you know, real terms, offline, you know, in your real life, well, online is real life, but in, you know, your personal relationships as well, finding the people that you can be yourself with, because I know sometimes your family will never accept you for who you are, and your current friends, but seeking out authentic people that do accept you and, you know, won't do any harm to you as well. So yeah, so stellium 3 is Mars, Vista and the midheaven in Aquarius at a 90% orb, and this is devoted action in public. So 3 points in Aquarius, you know, we've got Mars, Vista and the midheaven, giving us concentrated, devoted action energy. So Mars is our action, will, drive, assertion, power, also our anger and initiative. Vista is our devotion, sacred flame, what we tend to, what we build, priestess energy, you know, feminine energy, tapping into our spirituality and commitment. And the midheaven is our public image, career, calling, how we are seen, right, our legacy. So at 19% orb, this is the tightest of the 3 stelliums and the most active. So our public work is becoming a devotion, right? Should become a devotion, not a performance. Mars gives energy, Vista gives sacred focus, the midheaven makes it visible. We're being called to sacred public work, not work that makes us feel special, but work that we're devoted to regardless of recognition, work that we would do even if nobody was watching, because it matters, because it serves, because it's ours. And, you know, so it might just, maybe we've been doing the public work of being seen, and this stellium again asks us, can you do public work because you're called to it, which is Aquarius energy, right? So again, as I said, if you've been dimming your light, this is a call to service, this eclipse, you know, but service in something greater than yourself without sacrificing yourself, right? Can you be visible by a byproduct of devotion instead of the goal? The shadow of this energy is performing devotion, making your calling into a new brand, using Vista's sacred flame to feed Mars's ego, revolutionary work that's actually just ego dressed in collective service, you know, such as look how devoted I am, and performed as identity. To integrate this energy, find work that you would do if nobody applauded you, right? Let Mars action serve Vista, you know, your devotion energy. Express yourself through midheaven visibility without needing the visibility to validate the devotion. Your work becomes prayer, your action becomes offering, your public role becomes service, not performance, you know, devotion. And this is the hardest integration for people, because devotion that doesn't seek, you know, look for recognition can feel invisible, and invisible can feel like death, you know. But here's the secret: devotion that doesn't seek recognition is more powerful than performance that does, because it's rooted in genuine commitment, not desperate need. When you're devoted to something larger than your ego, visibility happens anyway, but it's different. It's not validation, it's impact, not applause and lights, it's recognition of useful work, right? That's what this stellium offers, right? And this is what the aspects of this eclipse is offering us, you know. Visible devotion, public service, work that matters and happens to be seen, not work that's done to be seen, right? And that's the main message of this eclipse, right? You know, being your authentic self and allowing what's yours to come to you, paying attention to what you genuinely are devoted to, not what you think you should be devoted to, right? That's the work, right? That's what this eclipse is calling us to. So now I'm going to talk about the Sabian degrees that are influencing this Leo eclipse on the 3rd of March, right? Lunar eclipse, yeah. So, as I said earlier, the moon's in the 19th degree of Leo, and that has the Sabian degree, a houseboat party, and it rules the ventricular spectrum in the human body. And the theme that this is bringing, and this pair of solar and lunar eclipse, so we had the solar eclipse, right, in Aquarius on the 17th, is that the dead are back in the living. So the The party, our performance, is happening on the houseboat, which is an unstable foundation. The houseboats on the sea, yeah, they can be kind of stable, but stabler than probably they were 100 years ago when these Sabin degrees were written. But, you know, of course, a party, you know, a house flat on the ground is more stable, right? So it's reminding us of the party, which is our performance, that while we're entertaining others and, you know, pretending to be someone who we're not, our core sense of self-worth is floating with every wave of external validation, and it's not solid ground, depending on, you know, likes and all of that, and people to say how good you are. It's not a solid ground, because what happens when they take that away? We need to have some kind of internal validation system, right? What's there, even when the external praise goes away. So, you know, the ground is not solid, it's just water, and we're being called and supported astrologically by the aspects, by these Sabian symbols, to find stability. So the ventricircular spectrum is the wall between the heart chambers that keeps oxygenated blood, which is life-giving, separate from deoxygenated blood, which is depleted, which needs to be replenished, right? When this wall is compromised, the blood mixes, the heart works harder, the body doesn't get proper oxygen, right? And, you know, this is a metaphor for us, for you. If you let others' opinions deplete, you know, external depleted, right, contaminate your sense of self, which is life-giving because it's internal. Your heart, you know, has been working overtime trying to pump validation from people who can't give it. So sometimes this is about seeking approval from that parent who will never give it, you know, that lover who won't give it, from that person who won't give it, you know, whilst your actual vitality gets diluted, you know, because sometimes we can't make people love us. We can only control ourselves. So it's about, you know, giving ourselves the things that, yes, maybe we wish that parent or others would give us, right? So this eclipse is repairing the spectrum through crisis, through emotional surgery, through forcing you to start mixing what's yours, which is your internal worth, with what's theirs, which is their external opinion, right? The surgery will hurt, the recovery will take time, but the alternative, your heart will eventually fail from the strain of trying to oxygenate yourself with other people's, you know, sort of like validation. And ultimately this Sabin symbol is telling us that our ancestors, you know, the dead backing the living, the ones who performed to survive, are backing you to stop seeking external validation, right? This pair of eclipse in Leo and Aquarius, they're the same energy, you know, Leo's fits fire, Aquarius is fits air, right? So they're saying, we did it, you know, your ancestors, what you had to do, but you don't have to do it anymore. What you've got, stop performing, start living, because, you know, 100 years ago it was actually dangerous to be yourself, and in some countries now it is still dangerous, you know, and it's a privilege if you know, live in a country where you are allowed to be yourself. But of course there's always people who want you to be who they want you to be, and we can be scared to be ourselves as well. So, you know, it's about start performing, start living. That's what the 19th degree of Leo is asking us to do. Then we've got the sun at the 19th degree of Aquarius. So the theme of this, the Sabin symbol for this, is a forest fire that's been quenched, which has been put out, right? And the body part ruled by this is the spinal nervous system. So it's opposite energy to the moon's houseboat party. The fire, you know, revolution, transformation, cleaving, has been put out. The destruction stopped before completion. So, you know, we're in the middle. Maybe for some of you, you're in the middle of burning down your old identity, your old performance, your old way of being seen, and someone, maybe you, maybe others, said stop, that's too much, that's too destructive, save something. So you did. You stopped mid-revolution, and now you're standing in a half-burnt forest wondering why you still feel like you're suffocating, because you didn't finish the burn, right? You saved parts of the old structure, routines, ways of relating to yourself and others that are toxic, right? Whatever needed to go, you let it stay. So the spinal nervous system is our entire communication network between the brain and body, and when the spine is compromised, signals don't flow. You think move and the body doesn't respond. You think speak and the voice stays silent. And this eclipse says the fire needs to be completed, not widely, not destructively, not in a chaotic way, but completely. What you try to save from flames is actually already dead. Keeping it around is just haunting yourself with a corpse you're too afraid to bury. Let the fire finish. The quenching was fear, the completion is freedom, right? So we have also got the South Node in Leo, and the Sabian symbol for this is a street pageant, right? So this rules the right atrium in the body, and a street pageant, a carnival, street party, right? A festival is a performance as public, spectacle, visibility as commodity, self as entertainment for the masses. This is what the South Node is asking you to release. The part of you that treats your life as performance for others' consumption, the part that always is on stage, always checking if people are watching, always curating your resistance for maximum likability or impact, right? So like the spectrum, the right atrium is in the heart chamber, and what this does is receives the oxygenated blood from the body before sending it to the lungs for re-oxygenation. This is the receiving chamber, and it's receiving blood that's already been used, already depleted, already exhausted, and that's you receiving external validation that's already depleted, already exhausted, right? Already used up by the person who gave it, if they even did, and then trying to make that depleted validation your life force. No wonder you're exhausted, you're trying to survive and boom. So again, a lot of the Sabian symbol and this eclipse is pointing us all to go within and to look within and to see what we need to heal within, so we can give ourselves that internal validation. And Mercury's in retrograde right now, supporting us, going internal with our communication. And we still got Jupiter in retrograde as well. Uranus is direct, but also, it's pointing us towards being more individual in grounded Taurus, right? And we also got Venus at the 3rd degree of Pisces. And the Sabian symbol for this is a putrefied forest. So in the 19th degree, the forest has just stopped being on fire. In this degree, the forest has become putrefied, it's turned to stone. So Venus, the ruler of the Nakshatra that Leo's in, right, sits at a petrified forest, trees that have turned to stone, organic life that became mineral, beautiful, yes, eternal, yes, but now dead, because trees are living, and when they're putrefied, when wood, it's no longer living. It can look beautiful, but it's not actually living. It's set in its ways, it's rigid. It can look beautiful, it's eternal, for it's turned to stone. So this is Venus in Pisces, shadow, love that's been performed so long, it's crystallized into something that looks like love, but doesn't actually nourish. Relationships where you're going through the motions, creative work that's technically perfect, but emotionally dead, Nerves on the right foot is what this Sabian symbol rules, right? The nerves that tell you whether you're standing on solid ground or about to step off a cliff. When those nerves are compromised, you can't feel what you're walking on. You might think you're safe when you're actually in danger, or you think you're in danger when you're actually perfectly fine. So yeah, your love compass can be broken, not because you're broken, but because you're becoming love instead of feeling it for so long that you can't tell the difference anymore. So it's about, letting go of what, is stopping you from feeling the full experience of love, and not only just love, your own love, your own self-acceptance. Then we've got Neptune at the 7th degree of Pisces, which is a cross lying on the rocks, and this rules the right talus in the human body, the ankle bone. So Neptune at a cross lying on the grounds, the abandon, it wants us to set the weight down. The sacrifice is complete, reminding us of the things that we know that we need to let go of and supporting us to let them go. And Neptune in Pisces is asking, what cross are you still carrying that isn't yours? What burden are you still performing as noble suffering? What martyrdom are you clinging to because it makes you feel special? The cross lying on the rocks isn't Jesus on the cross performing salvation. It's the cross after set down, abandoned, no longer needed, and the right talus, the ankle bone, the weight bearing bone of the foot, the pivot point that allows movement. When it breaks, you can't walk, you're immobilized. Your martyrdom is immobilizing you. Your performance of suffering is keeping you stuck. The cross on the rock says you're allowed to pull it down now. Nobody's judging you for not carrying it anymore, except you. Saturn is at the 8th degree of Pisces, and Sabin symbology for this is a girl blowing a bugle, and this rules the left talus, the other ankle bone. So Saturn and Neptune are barely apart. They're 0.53 apart actually. The Sabin symbol of a girl blowing a bugle, that's the innocent sounding the alarm, the child calling attention to what adults are ignoring. So your inner child, this represents giving you, the reality check, Saturn in Pisces, and the Piscean need or pull to escape. Pisces is great. It can take us to the highest spiritual heights, but also the lowest addictive lows and toxic relationship lows as well. So Saturn is imposing structure and routine on, the free-flowing boundarylessness of Pisces energy, that actually we have responsibilities voice when Pisces wants to dissolve into everything and ignore red flags and, just, overindulge in, drugs, alcohol, Netflix and chilling, anything that's toxic to us in excess, right? So I'm not saying any of these things are bad, but if they're taking us away from the things we're meant to be doing, then we have to rethink. So girl blowing the bugle is someone young, someone not yet corrupted by how things are done, someone who sees the truth and speaks it because she doesn't yet know that she's not supposed to speak truth. Like, children can be innocent to say the things that us adults are trained not to say, right? And I believe this is what causes so much problems in our relationships. So that's our work. This symbol is reminding us to find a part of yourself that still knows how to sound the alarm without checking if it's polite. The part that sees the performance and says this is fake before the adult voice says yes, but we have to keep performing to survive. And the left talus is, Saturn Capricorn energy rules bones, structure, routine, weight bearing, responsibility, grounded action, right? And this is the other ankle because, we've got Neptune in the right talus, right? And we need both ankles to walk, and Venus, Neptune on one side and Saturn on the other, love and reality, dissolution and structure and routine. So it's calling us to the fact we have to use our creative brain and our logical brain and our mind, body and soul and make them come into unison, because we can't walk on one without the other, because we become imbalanced, right? So this eclipse is all about finding that balance within, finding that validation and healing from within, right? Jupiter is in the 21st degree of Gemini, which has the Sabian symbol, a labour demonstration, and this rules the body part, the arms and muscles. So Jupiter is forming a harmonious aspect to both the Sun and the Moon. In this eclipse sits at a labour demonstration. Workers are demanding better conditions. The collective voice saying this isn't sustainable, Jupiter in Gemini wants to expand through communication. Remember, Mercury's in retrograde right now, which is Gemini's ruler, right? So it wants us to grow through learning and connection, communication. But the labour demonstration Sabian symbol says expansion, growth requires organisation, collective action, not just individual hustle, right? So your Leo performance has been an individual hustle. If I just work harder, shine brighter, perform better, then I'll get what I need. And the labour demonstration says that's not how this works. You can't individually effort your way out of a system that's dysfunctional, right? You need collective support. And as I said, Aquarius is wanting us to do things for the collective, but in a healthy way, but also not in a codependent way as well. So the arm muscles is the strength to carry, to hold, to work. Arms don't work alone. They're connected to the shoulders, which is the support, elbows, which gives us flexibility, and hands that we take action with, right? Our arms are exhausted from carrying the weight of our performance alone, and this eclipse says pull it down, let others carry some of it, especially their own baggage, right? Think about what is your responsibility. Sometimes we hold ourselves accountable for stuff that isn't ours. Yes, we can support others to change, but we can't make them, right? So it's reminding us, to let others carry some of the weight. Ask for help if need be in a healthy way. Think about it. Do you really need help? Or is it just keeping you in your pattern? Seek out therapy, ask for help from, all the different sides of your personalities, and making your strengths and weaknesses work together, right? Letting other people carry, saving your problems is not a weakness. Having emotions is not a weakness, it's wisdom, right? And then we've got Uranus in the 4th degree of Taurus that has the Sabian symbol, the rainbow's pot of gold. And I think this is my most favourite Sabian symbol, if you wanted to know. And it rules the revolver in the human body. And Uranus in Taurus is forming a quintile to the Sun, sits at the rainbow's pot of gold, the promise of reward after the storm, the treasure that allegedly waits at the end of suffering. But here's Uranus's disruption. There is no pot of gold. The rainbow is the gold, the storm is the treasure, the journey is the destination. All those cliches you roll your eyes at, Uranus is saying they're true. You have been performing your way towards an imagined arrival when you will finally be special enough, seen enough, validated enough to start performance. Uranus says that moment isn't coming because it's not real. The pot of gold is a story you tell yourself to justify continuing the performance. The revolver in the human body is the little dangling thing at the back of your throat that helps with speech and swallowing. It's tiny, so we easily ignore it, but it's essential for clear communication. Your small voice, the one that's not performing, the one that knows the truth, the one you've been ignoring, is trying to speak. This eclipse turns up the volume, listen. And that's what this eclipse is calling us, to listen to our body, to listen to our small voice. And yeah, I know it's hard to change and come out of our comfort zone. It can be scary and terrifying to let go of relationships. None of this is easy. I'm not saying it is, but this eclipse is supporting you starting your evolution, your growth, into healing, your spiritual, emotional and psychological health, or supporting you continuing that work, right? Reminding us, that the pot of gold is our connection with our higher self, inner child, and the side of us who just wants to, have fun sometimes, and just chill and relax, and the side of us that wants to be intellectual or spiritual, and maybe, to express and to get in tune with all sides of ourselves. And then we've got the midheaven at the 9th degree of Aquarius, which is has the Sabian symbology, a flag turned into an eagle. So This rules the skin of our right lower leg, and the midhaven is our public image, career, how we're seen in public, right? Sits at, the Sabian symbology of a flag turned into an eagle, and the symbol, the flag, becomes a living creature, representation becomes reality. The thing that stood for something transforms into the thing itself. Your public image has been a flag, a symbol, a brand, a representation of who you want people to think you are. This eclipse says, let it become an eagle, let it be alive, messy, unpredictable, real. Eagles don't perform flight, they fly. Eagles don't check if people are watching, they hunt. Your public image has been a performance for so long that you've forgotten it's supposed to be connected to your actual life. And the skin of the right lower leg, the protective covering, the boundary between inside and outside, the interface with the world, your boundary between public and private has been too porous. You've let the public performance contaminate your private truth. This eclipse is re-establishing that boundary. What's public can be public. What's private needs to stay private. You don't owe people access to everything just because they're watching, So it's reminding us that we're all allowed to have that private inner sanctuary, that place where we can just chill out inside of us, right? And Pluto is at the 11th degree of Capricorn, and this Sabian symbol is pheasants display their brilliant colours on a vast lawn, and this degree rules the left cocolite ligaments that give us knee stability in the human body. And Pluto at this degree of, pheasants, birds displaying their brilliant colours on vast lawn is asking us, is this a genuine display or performance? Are the pheasants showing their colours because it's mating season, which is an authentic need, or because someone's watching, performance? That's Pluto's question. Transformation requires knowing the difference between authentic display and performative display, right? And between showing your colours because you're proud of them versus showing them because you need validation. Pheasants on a vast lawn, the space here is what it's reminding us. Pluto's energy here, room to display without grounding, but there's also exposure, vulnerability, predators can see you. This eclipse asks, can you show your colours even knowing you might be attacked for them? Because really a lot of the time, we got online trolls, offline trolls, this is what happens, right? So this is why I'm a big supporter of, building that inner strength. That's helped me in my life, and obviously I still have my battles and all of that, but I can vouch for it's a slow process, but it's also worthwhile, the inner and shadow and inner child work, and learning to get comfortable with your own self and getting that validation from within, right? And I still have, like I said, scars and struggles like everybody else, but building that sense of self has helped me. So this Sabian symbol rules the left circulate ligaments, the structure, the routine that stabilizes, the knee, that allow us to pivot, to change direction and absorb impact without collapsing. Our ability to change, to pivot, to adapt without losing ourselves. That's what's being tested with this set of solar lunar eclipse in Leo and Aquarius, right? Can you shift, change from performance to authenticity without your entire identity collapsing, Can you, and sometimes we have to lose ourselves, lose it a little, to actually find our authentic self. So that's not what it's about. I mean, of course, your identity, who you are now, is masking your authentic self as well. So it's asking, can you change how you are seen without feeling like you're dying? The ligaments say yes, but they need to be strong enough. This eclipse is strengthening them through resistance, through pressure, through the weight of truth, right? So all in all, these 10 Sabian degrees, 10 body parts, 10 invitations to see our performance from different angles. The primary symbol, the moon at the 19th degree of Leo, shows the instability. The sun opposite the 19th degree of Aquarius shows the incomplete revolution. The South Node, the street pageant, gives you, it names what you are releasing, right? So the planets, the points, the angles, fill in the details where you've been crystallized. Venus, where you have been martyred. Neptune, where you've been suffering. Saturn, where you need collective support. Jupiter, where you're seeking false treasure, which is represented by Uranus, and where symbol needs to become reality, that's the midheaven, right? And where display needs authenticity, which is represented by Pluto. And through it all, the body, the literal body, holding the metaphors, the heart wall is compromised, the spine is unable to transmit signals, the ankles bearing weight they weren't designed for. The throat is trying to speak through a performance. The knee ligaments are learning to pivot, to adapt, to be flexible without collapse. This eclipse energy isn't abstract, it's somatic, it's in your body, right? The performance lives in your muscles, the validation seeking lives in your nervous system, the abandonment terror lives in your heart chambers. You can't think your way out of this one, you have to feel your way through, right? And the symbols, they are your map, not your destination. The destination is who you are when you start performing. The symbols just show you where you've been performing without realizing it. Now you realize it, what are you going to do? That's the integration. That's what the Sabin symbols, the aspects, and all in all, this Leo lunar eclipse on the 3rd of March is calling you to look into. So now I'm just gonna start talking about the numerology, the numbers involved in this eclipse, the karmic reckoning. As I said at the beginning, this is about judgment. This is a judgment eclipse calling us to think about what we need to let go of in our life. And then I'm going to talk about how this eclipse affects our dream, how we can manifest and release things, giving more techniques for that. I'm going to talk a bit more about the Nakshatra this eclipse is in, and how it affects our diet and lifestyle and our relationships, and also give you a final 6-month timeline from March to September to get you to really focus. And then I'm going to finish up with zodiac guidance for all 12 sun, moon and rising signs, so stay tuned for all that good stuff as well. So numerologically, this eclipse is in the 19th degree of Leo, reminding us about the completion, the ending before the beginning, the start. So 1 add 9 equals 10 and 1 add 0 equals 1. So 19 is ending to begin, and you can't start anew with number 1 without completing the old, which is 9, and between them 10, the 0, the void. So again, numerologically, it's reminding us about ending the performance, passing through the void, the emptiness, the numbness of letting things go, right, and where you don't know who you are, beginning to exist as your authentic self, which is one energy, and it's not comfortable, as I said, but it is necessary. And then we've got the 3-3 energy, because the eclipse happens on the 3rd of March, 3-3, double 3, which is expression, creativity, communication, but also scattered energy. So Leo wants us to express ourselves, but performs instead. And this eclipse asks, what would authentic expression look like if you weren't checking whether people liked it or not? And reminding us to use it, don't perform it, use our skills and talents and our uniqueness, right? And 2026, is again a 1 year, beginning through ending. Last year, 2025, was a 9 energy. 2 add 2 add 5, right? 2 add 2 add 6 equals 10, and reducing to number 1 again. So this entire year is about new beginnings through completion, ending things, so ending those projects, finishing things that are not productive. I finished doing my weekly scopes this year, and I made that decision because I used them as my training ground, and now I'm moving on to different astrological things because I feel more ready to, tackle other things like natal interpretations and stuff. So it's about ending the things and starting things that are more productive for you, but completing what you need to let go of as well. And it reminds you that you can't force new beginnings, you have to pass through the ending first. Like I knew maybe, I needed to give my weekly scopes a long time ago, but I was rushing the ending. I had to become prepared to do that and to move on to something else, right? So I was in the void, and this energy is reminding us of void first, the not knowing first, right? And then we have the sacred pause, living in the zero. So eclipses live in the space between ending 9 and beginning 1, and that space, that's the zero, that's the pause, right? And most people try to skip the zero, and this eclipse won't let you. You're in the zero, performance ending, authentic you beginning. Right now, you're nowhere, you're nobody, nothing, and this is perfect because zero is where the transformation actually starts. For some of you, it is blowing your house down, letting go of everything you know before. Some of you will feel like you need to do that, right? And you will feel this kind of void, and this zero is reminding us that transformation happens in the zero, in that void, not in the doing, but in the being with nothing. Stay in zero longer than feels comfortable. That's where the gold is, and again, I can vouch for that. It is scary, but it is where the true gold and the true you is. So, as I said, this is the eclipse of the karmic reckoning, bringing everything that needs to be released to our attention, everything we put on pause and we're avoiding to our attention, especially the wound beneath the performance, right? So this eclipse season exposes I need validation, that wound and that symptom, of I need validation, and the wound is, if I'm not special, I will be abandoned, as I said. And somewhere, as I said, probably when you were young, probably before language, you learned that ordinary equals invisible, forgotten, left to die. Learn specialness was survival, doing the things that made the adults last, or doing the things that made your parents give you more love and attention, whatever it was. It worked, right, for a while. Performance kept you safe, specialness kept you visible, or whatever it is that people know you for. A lot of people, if you're codependent or people pleasing, if you do things for others, always there. And like I said, nothing's wrong with these qualities, but a lot of the time people take advantage of these kind of traits, and then sometimes people can go the other way where you don't help anyone because you're tired of getting hurt and walked over, and then you forget that loving, caring side of yourself. So it's about finding a balance. Do not make anyone take your weakness, your loving kindness for advantage, but also don't hide that side of you. Sow it with the right people, and also sow it, but know how to build that inner sense of self that you get your validation from, and you have your boundaries so you don't let people overstep your boundaries, so you can be empathetic and strong and not take any crap as well. Two things, more than two things can be true at the same time, right? So it's reminding us that when we grew up, the strategy that have kept us alive at 7 started to kill us maybe at 37, and we can't sustain performance as identity. We can't live on external validation as a life force, because as I said, even if you keep on getting it and you're used to it, there will come a time when that goes away, and for a lot of people that's their sense of self gone as well. So it's important to have an external sense of self, an inner sanctuary where you nurture yourself and you can provide all the things you seek from the external world and others to yourself, right? So the wound beneath the wound is abandonment, terror dressed as specialness, addiction, and this eclipse, as I said, is surgically removing the dress so you can see the wound itself. It's raw, it's unfiltered, but whatever baggage you dig up or continue to work through, it's yours, and you can do it, right? You just have to be gentle with yourself, because a lot of the time we can be harsh with ourselves and we can be like, oh, I don't want to do this inner child side of work, I don't want to be better, I just want to stay in my comfort zone, because it's so painful to face our past, right? And I know that it can be, but this eclipse is really calling to our attention the need to work through our psychological and emotional and spiritual trauma and wounds, right? And the ways that we're toxic to ourselves and others, and the ways that we depend on others or enable others as well. So in terms of the dream work during this eclipse, dreams as eclipse messengers, right? The subconscious is speaking to us. So 2 weeks before the eclipse on the 17th of February, this is when we have the solar eclipse, right? And 2 weeks after the 17th of March, dreams can be more louder, vivid and disturbing. So the themes of dreams may be performance on stage, forgotten lines, trying to entertain but the people are bored, exposure, feeling naked in public, someone sees you without the mask and rejects you, abandonment, people you love can walk away, calling for help but nobody comes, rage, screaming loud but no sound, hitting something but can't make an impact, childhood, you can be back in your childhood home, parents there but different, trying to tell them something but they're not listening. So whatever dreams come up, it's important to try and write them down or voice record them, keep paper and pen by your bed, maybe not your phone, because blue light can disrupt recall, but if you wake up in the morning, voice note it, whatever works for you, so upon waking, don't move, stay half awake and feel the dream's emotional residue. What emotions are linger, what sensations are still there, write them down immediately, even fragments of the dream, like I was in the house, someone was watching, I felt exposed, that's enough. Ask the dream, what part of me was speaking, what performance am I doing in waking life that disowns me, what wound is this revealing? And to integrate all of this, you can use active imagination technique. So choose one dream image that disturbs you, close your eyes and return to that image. And I know this may be scary and not sort of like easy to do. Number 3, ask it, what do you want me to know? Number 4, let it respond in its own voice and have a conversation with it until you understand, or you have more understanding about what the dream may mean, because dreams can show our problems and we can implement the solutions if we work with them. That's the integration, right? So in terms of manifestation and release, so lunar eclipses are all about releasing, right? Solar eclipse equals manifestation, lunar eclipse release, letting go. So we're not manifesting dream life, you're releasing the performance, blocking it. What you're releasing and how is the performance, as I said, not creativity, not confidence, just the performance of those and other things, and your need for external validation. How do you do this? So notice when you create, speak, show up and catch yourself checking, will people like this? That check, that's the performance, right? Create without checking even once. Also, this eclipse is all about releasing the need to be special, as I said. So as I said, maybe being special kept you alive as a child or helps you survive as an adult, right? But it won't anymore. This eclipse is allowing you to be ordinary and still exist, to not people please and do everything that people say and still be cared for and not needed but wanted by the right people, right? So practice being forgettable on purpose, practice saying no and not doing things for people, go somewhere nobody knows you, don't try to stand out, just exist, notice you don't die. So external validation, as I said, versus authentic life force, right? So we've been trying to oxidate ourselves, remember the Sabin symbols, with other people's likes and applause, and this is not sustainable. So to get validation from within, we have to create something. Don't show anyone for 1 week. Notice how it feels to exist without feedback and maybe give yourself the lights and the praise for it, right? For some of you, you've got that audience in your head. Even when you're alone, you're performing for an imagined audience, and this can be exhausting. So when you catch yourself on stage in your own mind, ask, who am I performing for? Name them, tell them to leave. Mom, this isn't your business. Instagram, I don't owe you content, or TikTok or whatever. Evict the audience, reclaim the mind. So you can do this release ceremony. So you need a paper, pen and a fire source and privacy, so you can write the performance down, thank it, release it, burn it, watch the paper burn, sit with grief, or you can just play fire under, laptop or something if it's not safe, or you don't have like a lighter or matches or anything, and affirm what remains. Or you can voice note a recording of what you want to release, or film it and then delete it, right, and delete it from the recycling bin as well, so it's gone. And affirm what remains, so you can say I am, and say your name, I exist, and that's enough. Do this alone, not for Instagram, not for proof, because you're ready to start performing and start living. Light seeds that need fire to germinate. Some growth literally needs destruction first, and your crisis, the chaos that comes, that void, remember, is your spark, right? So as I mentioned earlier, this eclipse falls in the Pada 2 of Parva Pellegrini, and the Pada 2 is specific. It's the critical eye and pleasure ray. Pada 2, as I said, is ruled by Mercury and Virgo energy, so it brings analytical energy to the Venus ruled Parva Pagini, and Leo's exuberance, need to be out there, meets Virgo's critical eye. As I said, the moon moves into Virgo on the 4th, right, of March, so pleasure meets perfectionism, creativity meets is this good enough. So the gifts of this is refined creative work without killing it, discernment about which pleasures nourish versus numb, critical thinking applied to performance patterns. You can see the performance clearly, and service orientated creativity. The shadow of this energy is that perfectionism can kill joy. Critiquing ourselves so harshly, you can't stop creating. Performing, having your shit together whilst internally falling apart, using analysis to avoid feeling. So the Mercury-Venus tension is that Venus wants pleasure, beauty, union and flow, and Mercury wants precision, analysis, improvement and utility, right? And these don't naturally cooperate. Venus says enjoy this, Mercury says but could it be better? And the eclipse in Pada 2 asks, can you create with discernment without perfectionism strangling you? Can you refine work without destroying joy? Can you be critical of performance patterns without being critical of worth? And that's Pada 2 work. Critical mind that helps you see the performance is the same, and critical mind that wants to perform perfection. Learn to use discernment without weaponizing it against yourself. So the Navasa path is from Leo to Virgo. So Navasa is the soul's path. People see, Leo's creativity, confidence sign, you're becoming. Virgo service is discernment, humble mastery. So the journey from Leo to Virgo is from look at me to how can I help, from performance to service, from needing to be special to being genuinely useful. And this doesn't mean dimming your Leo sign, it means letting your sign serve something larger than ego. Virgo doesn't need applause, Virgo needs to be useful. For someone with Leo eclipse, that's threatening, because if you don't need applause, who are you? You're useful, practical, skillful, of service, and surprisingly, more fulfilling than applause ever was. But you have to let go of the applause, the need for lights, external validation to discover that, right? So the medicine of this eclipse, the tools and practices that you can do to, live it, embody this authentic self, so remember, you can't think your way through eclipses, you have to feel your way through. So you can do a body scan for performance detection, so lie down, scan head to toe, so just lay down, just think, about your head, then your throat, then your, your shoulders, your arms, your belly, your chest, your thighs, your knees, your lower legs, your feet, like that. And think and feel where the tension is, and that's where you're holding the performance. So name the location, breathe into it, and let it release, and do this as many times as you need to. And as I said, we've got Black Moon Lilith squaring, and it's in Scorpio, so rage, movement, put on music that makes you want to move, not pretty, chaotic, scream, dance, let your body express rage. That Lilith activates right now, punch the air, stomp, growl, let it be ugly, let it be spontaneous. You can also do some mirror work, right? So stand in front of the mirror, look yourself in the eye, say I see you, not the performance but you. Notice what comes up, stay with it, right? Grounding through touch as well, when you feel like performing, and in your own mind, touch something real, grass, tree bark, cold water. The physical world doesn't care about the performance, right? Relational practices, so one truth protocol. In each significant relationship this week, speak one truth that you've been performing around. Start with, I need to tell you something I've been holding back. Set boundaries, practice saying no without explaining why. Your no is complete. Creative practices, so you can create ugly art, create something internally ugly, bad poetry, terrible painting, off-key singing. Prove creating without it being good enough doesn't kill you. No serving zone, create something you don't show anyone for 30 days. Practice creating for the act itself, not for validation. So in terms of journaling prompts, you can put, I've been performing, and what you've been performing to avoid feeling. Number 2, if I start performing, I'm afraid of whatever you're afraid of. Number 3, the audience in my head is made up of, and then write that. If nobody was watching, I would. Then, finish that sentence. My rage at having to perform is actually rage at, and answer that. Answer raw, don't filter. It's not for anyone else's eyes but yours, between your eclipse and you, right? So in terms of relationship, it's bringing judgment to the way we communicate to ourselves and others. It's a reckoning, a judgment, right? So our performance patterns in relationships are under the spotlight, right? The way we perform for others, the way we perform for ourselves, the way we run into our intoxicating addictions, whether it's substances or whatever it is, to stop ourselves from being authentic with ourselves, right? Because it can be scary and painful and, draining to do all the inner work as well. So I get it. So it's reminding us that we don't just perform for the world, we can perform for partners, maybe more for them than anyone, so maybe, in relationships you've been entertaining your partner, being the likable partner, the low maintenance partner, performing the good partner while actually having your needs go unmet. And this eclipse asks, can you be in a relationship without performing? Can you show up messy, needy, difficult, real, and still be loved? And the Fool's Hammer number 1 in relationships. So we've got Juno, which Fool's partnerships being hammered by Chiron, as I said, which is our wound, and Keris, the nurturing energy, and the South Node performance in the Fool's Hammer, right? So committed relationships are being compressed, put under pressure. Partnerships where you've been performing are being tested. So the question of, does this person love you or your performance? If they love performance, the relationship will struggle when you stop. If they love you, the relationship will deepen when you stop. And the eclipse clarifies which, right? So the red flags you're performing is that you can't relax around your partner. You're always monitoring, always on. You shrink your emotions so they feel comfortable. You don't ask for what you need. You don't want to be high maintenance. You can feel like auditioning for continued love, exhausted after spending time together instead of, being nourished. And if you checked multiple, you felt a lot of that, if you really felt any one of these, the red flags, you can't relax around your partner. You're always monitoring, always on. You always make your emotions smaller so they feel comfortable. You don't ask for what you need. You don't want to be high maintenance. You feel like auditioning. You have to keep the performance up for continued love, right? And you just feel exhausted after spending time with them instead of nourished, because you have to not be you, right? So if you checked, multiple, if you felt resonated with what I just said twice for emphasis, right? You're not in a partnership, you're in a performance with a witness. So healthy partnerships look like you can be ugly emotionally and still be loved. Your no is respected without justification. You can ask for what you need without saying. Your partner actually sees you. You can be ordinary and still chosen. If your current partnership doesn't offer you this eclipse will show you what needs to change. Either the relationship evolves or you do without it, and the conversations to have if you're brave with romantic partners is, I need to tell you something. I've been performing a good partner instead of being my actual self, or whatever it is you've been doing. Here's what I've been hiding, whatever it is you've been hiding. I'm not sure what happens next, but I can't keep the performance up. With friends, you can be like, I've been the fun, helpful, entertaining friend while suppressing, bottling up my actual feelings. We need to change our friendship, our friendship needs to have space for my mess too, as well as your mess, because sometimes you can perform, not having feelings because people expect you to always be the one that don't have problems. It's, who got all your crap together, and two things can be true at the same time. You can have your crap together and still have problems emotionally, right? So, but sometimes people can put you in the box, right? So with family, the role I've played in my family isn't who I actually am. I'm allowed to be more than my role. This might be uncomfortable, but I'm doing it anyway. And as I said, these conversations will be hard. Some relationships will end, some will deepen or will clarify. And, before you can partner authentically with others, you have to partner with yourself. Fill yourself first, as I said, not with validation, but with presence, with showing up for yourself in a way you've been showing up for everyone else. Then your partnership with others become an addition, and I can vouch for this, not a salvation. And that's the North Node in Aquarius path. Partnerships as collaboration, teamwork between two whole people, right? So in terms of dietary and lifestyle, and grounding the lightning chaos of this Leo lunar eclipse, right? So in terms of our nervous system, it gets lit up, right? We get all the feels. So to support our nervous system with foods, magnesium supplements, or, dark leafy greens, pumpkin seeds, dark chocolate. Chocolate is medicine. Omega-3s, fatty fish, or the supplements, right? Walnuts, flax seeds, root vegetables such as sweet potatoes, beets, carrots. Avoid excess caffeine and alcohol. In terms of sleep hygiene, try not to have any screens on like television or laptop or mobile before bed, at least 1 hour before. Try to have some magnesium glycinate 30 minutes before sleep, or anything else that can help you fall asleep. A hot bath with Epsom salts or a nice shower. Journaling before bed. A cool room, heavy blankets, a weighted blanket, If you wake up at 3 a.m. with anxiety, don't fight it. Get up, journal, let material surface, write it down, voice note it, then go back to bed. Movement, not exercise, so your body holding trauma is being activated by this lunar eclipse, as I said, so move it out. So yoga, yin, or restorative, need, release, not achievement, or tai chi. Walking in nature, barefoot if possible. You can try dancing, chaotic, you don't have to do a routine or choreography or anything like that. Shaking, screaming, stand and shake the body for 5 minutes. Swimming. Avoid high intensity workouts. Feeding the performance pattern. Your body needs movement, gentle movement, or just natural movement, serve the release night image, so as I said, try to have some screen time boundaries more, because the eclipse activates, validation addiction, so social media will trigger, so maybe limit it to 2 times daily, turn off all notifications, unfollow accounts triggering comparison with others, consider social media fast between the 3rd and the 6th of March, notice the withdrawal, notice the impulse to check, notice the anxiety of not knowing if people are validating you. That's the addiction. Feel it, don't medicate it, with checking, just try it and be in the zone and feel it. And don't beat yourself up if you do check, just restart the counter again, just try and do your best. So, in terms of your environment, you may want to declutter one space completely, create no performance zone in one room where you don't have to be on, no social media, no laptop, whatever. Soft lighting, because harsh lights can activate performance mode, comfort over aesthetic, privacy. Your home should be your refuge, not your stage. So in terms of more questions, I've given you a lot of questions, right, to ask yourself during this eclipse over the next 6 months, right? So in terms of your performance, you can ask yourself, when did I first learn performance equals safety? What happened? Who taught me I had to earn love through being special? Number 3, what would I do, say, create if nobody was watching? Number 4, where am I still performing unconsciously? Number 5, what part of my personality is genuine versus curated? Number 6, in terms of, seeking validation, what do I need external validation for that I should give myself, right? How many times daily do I check if people are noticing me? What happens in my body when I don't get the expected validation? Who is my internal audience? Name them. Like I said, we can all have all sorts going on in our head. One parent telling us to do this, another telling us to do that, and next that told us to do this or that, just replaying, going around in our heads, draining our energy. So, you can also ask yourself, number 10, what would happen if I stop seeking other people's approval? In terms of your identity, you can ask, who am I without my performance? Actually answer this, try and find it out, right? What aspects of myself have I excelled, hidden to maintain likability? What does my too much energy want to express? We've been told we're too much, so we hide those things. So what is it, what's your too muchness, And for the right people, it's not too much, and if it's part of you, it's you, right? In terms of relationships, which relationships require me to perform to maintain them? Number 14, who actually knows the real me versus the curated, the social media version of me? What do I need to say? What I've been performing around, sometimes we go around in cycles, we don't speak direct even though we think we've said it. So think about what you need to say direct, especially in your relationships. You can ask, which relationships would survive me being authentically messy? In terms of like the rage, the anger you can be feeling, you can ask, what am I actually angry about beneath the performance? Who am I performing niceness for whilst raging internally? What would my rage say if I let it speak uncensored, right? So in terms of, the path moving forward, what does the North Node in Aquarius collective service feel like in my body? What would life look like if I mattered without mattering more than everyone else? What would I do if it didn't need to make me feel special? How would I show up if visibility was a byproduct, not a goal? What one thing can I do tomorrow that moves me towards authenticity? So answer this honestly, not how you think you should, how you actually feel. That's the difference. That's where the work lives, right? So now I'm going to give zodiac guidance for all 12 sun, moon and rising signs. So as I said, the moon is at the 19th degree of Leo, The Sun is at the opposite end at the 19th degree of Aquarius, and the eclipse is on the 3rd of March 2026, is at 11:34 GMT, right? So for Aries rising, Sun and Moon, your 5th and 11th house are activated. So this activates your creativity, your romance, your children or your inner child, your self-expression versus, your community, friendships and collective vision. Aquarius, right? 11th house and creativity and all of that was 5th house. So the shadow of this energy is that maybe you've been performing, being good creatively to feel special or a star of a friend group, because being ordinary feels like death. The medicine for this is creativity doesn't need an audience to be valid. Friendships don't need you entertaining. Can you create for joy, just for the fun of it, not for likes, right? Show up in community as one of many instead of the star. Can you do that? The integration of this energy is to make art nobody sees. Join a community where you're not the leader. Let creativity serve a collective goal instead of ego. And as I said, for those of you, and this goes for all 12 placements, right, that have been hiding yourself, it's about performing in the right ways and for the people that will come to you naturally, rather than just being what you think people want. So, your Aries fire wants to shine. Let it shine in service, not in performance. For Taurus, this activates your 4th house. That's what the Leo energy does, activating your 4th house, and Aquarius lights up your 10th house, so your home, your family, your roots, your private self, versus your career, public image, legacy and reputation, represented by the 10th house, right? So performing at home is the shadow, like the perfect host, family star, or performing publicly whilst your foundation, your internal world crumbles, right? Making career success your identity because your family taught ordinary equals failure. The medicine for this is public work doesn't need to make you special to matter. Your family doesn't need you to be the successful one to love you, or maybe they do. Some families are like that, so maybe you need to, give yourself the love of just being yourself that they can't give, and find people who can accept you for who you are. Ultimately, for Taurus, the question is, can you build a career that serves without needing to prove your worth? So can you build a career that serves without needing to prove your worth? Integrating this energy is your roots. Your 4th house need grounding, which is proper Taurus energy, right? Not performance. Your career, the 10th house, needs a revolutionary service. Aquarius, but not ego validation. Build something public while serving the collective. Build something private that nourishes you. Stop using one to avoid the other, right? So, do something just for yourself that's only for you, keeping a special part of you, which I believe all of us should have, that you can always fall back on, right? For Gemini, Sun, Moon and Rising, your 3rd house is being activated by Leo, and Aquarius is activating your 9th house. So your communication, learning, local environment, philosophy, higher education, travel and meaning making, your belief systems being activated. So the shadow of this is performing intelligence, being the clever one, the articulate one, communication, becoming a performance, checking if people are impressed by words, or making your philosophy, your beliefs into identity, performance. Spiritual bypassing can be very real here during this eclipse. So the work is, seeing where you're using your belief system, your communication or anything else just to be an identity, so you can get the likes. The medicine here is words don't need to impress to be valuable. Knowledge doesn't need to make you feel special. Can you communicate to connect and serve instead of being seen as brilliant? Can philosophy actually inform daily life instead of being performed as identity? To integrate this energy, write without audience, speak without checking if you sounded smart, learn for learning's sake, not credentials. Your mind is gift, stop weaponizing it for validation. Let communication serve collective understanding, not ego, right? For Cancer, Moon, Sun and Rising, your 2nd house Leo and your 8th house house Aquarius is being activated, so your resources, values, self-worth, money, shared resources, intimacy, transformation and power dynamics, right? So the shadow of this energy is making money, success, proof of worthiness, or perform in financial stability, whilst internally you're terrified, or you made intensity, depth, transformation, changing all the time your identity in relationships, performing deep connection whilst actually avoiding vulnerability. So the medicine here is remembering that your worth isn't determined by your bank account or ability to be deep. Can you value yourself without external proof? Can you share power in relationships without losing yourself? To integrate this energy, examine your relationship with money and power. Where are you performing security, performing depth, self-worth? Needs to be internal. Your intimacy, 8th house, needs to be real, not performed, shared resources, shared power. Stop hoarding either to feel safe. So it's about sharing your resources, sharing your power in a healthy way, right? Okay, for Leo rising and Leo sun and moon, your 1st house, which is being activated by Leo, and your 7th house is being activated by Aquarius. So your self, identity, body, how you show up versus your partnerships, relationships, and how you relate to others, right? So the shadow here is, because this one is direct, the eclipse is in your sign, right? Your entire identity has been performance, maybe. Who are you? Are you the created one for approval? Your relationships have been stages, maybe, where you have performed to keep people happy or to hide yourself, right? So the medicine here is you're allowed to be ordinary and still exist. For those of you who've been hiding, you're allowed to shine and still exist and be accepted by the right people. Identity, doesn't need to be special, it just needs to be yours. Relationships don't need you to entertain. This eclipse strips away performance, asking you, who are you underneath it? Can you be in partnership without needing to be the center? To integrate this energy, start performing yourself, just be yourself. In relationships, practice being one of two instead of a star. Your Leo wants to shine, perfect. Shine in service of partnership equally, not special. This is the hardest eclipse for most, but necessary. For you, Leo, right? So Virgo rising sun and moon, your 12th house, which is being activated by Leo, and your 6th house is being activated by Aquarius. So your spirituality, your hidden self, unconscious patterns, your daily work, health, service and routine are being activated. So the shadow here is performing spiritual wisdom, or performing having your, poo together, your shit together in daily life. 12th house performance is sneaky. You might not even know you're doing it. Performing surrender, performing healing, performing enlightenment, spirituality and all of that. Or making your daily work routine your performance, right? Because you try to do it perfectly, so it's not the realness. Sometimes we forget to do our exercise, to eat right, to do the things we know that are good for us, right? So it's all about being real, not performing anything. So the medicine here is spiritual practice doesn't need to look evolved. Daily work doesn't need to be perfect. Can you serve without needing it to prove worthiness? Can you surrender without performing it, right? To integrate this energy, do spiritual practice privately. Nobody needs to know you meditate, journal, heal, do daily work imperfectly. Let service be messy, unglamorous, genuinely useful, not performance perfection. Your hidden life, your 12th house needs rest, not performance. Your daily life needs authenticity, not achievement. For Libra, sun, moon and rising, your 11th house and 5th house are being activated. Your friendships, community, collective vision, creativity, romance and pleasure and children are being activated. So the shadow of this energy is being the star of your friend group, the 11th house, Leo performance, or making romantic relationships, creative expression into something you do for the collective instead of from genuine joy. And performing, being the fun friend, the creative one, the wise one, the one everybody wants around, The medicine is friendships don't need you to be entertaining, to value you, while the authentic ones don't, they accept all sides of you. Creativity doesn't need to save the world. Can you be in community as one of many instead of the star? Create for collective benefit without needing to make yourself special. Can you do that? So show up in friendships authentically, even if it makes you less likable. Create art serving community without checking if it makes you special. Your community, the 11th house, needs your real presence, not creative vision. Creativity, 5th house, needs freedom, not performance. For Scorpio rising, Scorpio sun and moon, your 10th house and 4th house are being activated. So your career, public role, legacy, home, family and roots, and your foundation. So the shadow is performing success publicly whilst your foundation crumbles, or making your career into identity because being ordinary at home feels like death, or performing power in public whilst privately feeling powerless. So the medicine here is your career doesn't need to make you special. Family doesn't need you to be the powerful one. Can you be visible publicly in service of the collective instead of ego? Can you build real foundation at home that doesn't require performance? To integrate this energy, do public work. Your 10th house needs to be real, not performed. The power, the private foundation, the 4th house, Aquarius, needs revolutionary authenticity, building home, family, serving the collective good, not personal image. So stop climbing for visibility, build for impact. This, building this foundation, this routine, will support your authentic self, right? Not the other way round, So, build for yourself rather than others is the message there, For Sagittarius rising, sun and moon, your 9th house and 3rd house are being activated. So your philosophy, beliefs, higher education, communication, learning and local environment. So the shadow is performing wisdom, performing involved consciousness, performing well-travelled theological advancement, being a spiritually awakened person. Your beliefs, your 9th house in Leo, can become identity performance, or performing being the teacher, the guru, the one with the answers, while actually daily communication, your 3rd house, is keeping you disconnected from philosophy. So the medicine here is beliefs don't need you to be made special, right, or to feel special. Wisdom doesn't need audience. Can your philosophy actually inform daily communication and serve others instead of proving how evolved you are? Can you learn without needing it to make you an expert, right? So to integrate this energy, start performing beliefs, live them in daily life, in how you communicate, in how you show up locally. Your philosophy, your 9th house, needs to be useful, not impressive. Your communication, the 3rd house, needs you to connect and serve, not showcase wisdom. Teach by example, not by performance. Allow your guru complexes to die now. Genuine teaching, can emerge and show up. So in terms of Capricorn rising, sun and moon, your 8th house and 2nd house is being activated. So transformation, said resources, intimacy, power dynamics, your 8th house versus your personal values, money, self-worth is being activated. So the shadow here is performing depth, performing transformation, making intensity your identity, which is 8th house Leo, or performing financial stability and success to avoid actual intimacy and shared power, which is 8th house, right? Or climbing a mountain of achievement whilst avoiding the valley of vulnerability. So the medicine here is your worth, your 2nd house, doesn't come from what you earn or achievement. Your depth, 8th house, doesn't need to be performed. Can you share resources and power without losing yourself? Can you value yourself based on contribution to collective good instead of personal accumulation? So to integrate this energy, your self-worth, your second house, where Aquarius is activating that, right, needs to be based on being useful to the collective, not achieving statements, and your intimacy, 8th house energy, right, needs to be real, sharing power, resources, vulnerability, not performing intensity. Start performance transformation, actually transform. The mountain goal learns the peak isn't the point, climb is. Don't have to climb, things alone. So for Aquarius, Sun, Moon and Rising, your 7th house and 1st house is being activated. So your partnerships, relationships, how you relate to others, 7th house, right, versus self, identity, body, how you show up, 1st house. So your shadow is performing detachment, performing being evolved, in your relationship dynamics, being independent, revolutionary, ahead of your curve, your generation as an identity, being special or non-conformist or whatever, and your relationships have suffered maybe, or performing being perfect for your partner whilst abandoning yourself. So the medicine for this is your identity. The 1st house doesn't need to be revolutionary to be valid. Relationships don't need you to be special, they need you to be real. Can you show up as yourself without needing to be unique? Can you be in partnership and let your partner shine without feeling threatened? To integrate this energy, start performing uniqueness, just be yourself. In relationships, let your partner be visible, creative, celebrated. You don't need to be revolutionary all the time. Your identity, the 1st house in Aquarius, is about collective service, not individual, being perfect and exceptional, at the top of your game. Relationships, the 7th house needs your heart, not performance ideals. Be weird because you are, not because it makes you special, For Pisces, Rising, Sun and Moon, your 6th house and 12th house are being activated. So your daily work, health, service, routine versus, your spirituality, hidden self, unconscious patterns, dissolution. So the shadow is performing service, performing healing, making, daily work, the 6th house Leo, into something, that proves your specialness, or performing spiritual wisdom whilst actually your daily life is chaotic, being dissolved, 12th house stuff to avoid, the basic simple mundane tasks of day-to-day life like cooking, washing and stuff. The medicine for this is surface, doesn't need to be special to be valuable. Spirituality doesn't need to be performed. Can you do daily work genuinely helping others without needing recognition? Can spiritual practice be private, messy, unsocial mediable, not snapping it just to put online, right? So to integrate this energy, do service work that's unglamorous, practical, genuine, useful, not performed compassion. Let spiritual practice, the 12th house, be collective but hidden, tending, looking after the collective unconsciousness without announcing it. Start performing healing, actually heal. Your daily life needs grounded service. Your spiritual life needs genuine surrender, not performed presence, So for all the signs, the eclipses, this Leo eclipse don't care about rising sign or sun sign performance, best qualities. It cares about you being real. Wherever this Leo lunar eclipse is hitting, the houses that it's affecting, that's where the performance lives, and that's where the work is, right? That's where freedom waits. Do the work, not for likes, not for applause, but because you're ready to start performing and start living, right? So for those of you who are maybe more sensitive, right, if you're empathetic, this eclipse can be intense. You cannot just be processing your own performance patterns but everyone else's projections. So you don't need to become hard to protect yourself. You just need to use good judgment. This is the reckoning judgment eclipse after all. So when things come up, ask, is this mine or theirs? If theirs, hand it back energetically. Imagine returning the toxic energy or whatever it is back to its source, right? Like post delivered to wrong address, not rude, just accurate. So in terms of protecting your energy, protect your energy field during the peak eclipse window, which is the 29th of February to the 6th of March. Limit time with energy vampires. those who need your performance. Say no to, obligations requiring you to be on all the time and performing all the time. Trust your body when it says withdraw. Some days require you to be alone, solitude. You may have more headaches, exhaustion, insomnia, feeling more emotionally overwhelmed. Your nervous cells can be more activated, and this is normal during eclipse, but if symptoms persist beyond 2 weeks, which is the post-eclipse period, see a doctor. So in terms of when to rest and when to socialize, there's no universal prescription. Some days your body will say feel everything now, others it will say rest or you'll break, listen. Your nervous system knows what it needs. Performance patterns taught you to override your body's goals. This eclipse teaches you to trust them. So in terms of, self-care as resistance, in the book, the body keeps the score right when your mind wants to forget. So your nervous system may have been tracking every performance, every abandonment, every moment you dimmed yourself. This eclipse is your body's reckoning, where it's going to bring it all out for your attention, or you just, you may already know what's there, but you've been ignoring it. But this eclipse is making it more likely that you can't ignore it. So remember, rest isn't weakness. It's how you, sort of store your trauma. Boundaries aren't selfish, right? They're how you're protecting your healing. You don't owe anything or anyone your energy, especially when you're doing this deep work. So in terms of, eclipse timing for the final time, from March to September, as I said, the eclipse isn't a one-day event. It's the beginning of a 6-month integration period. So month 1, March 2026, is the crisis and recognition phase. Peak, so breakdown, everything can fall apart. It is what it is. That's the point. The old, structure and routine built on performance needs to collapse, as I said, so something real can come up. So feel everything without performing it, process it. Don't perform processing it. Identify what's breaking versus transforming. Speak one truth per week. Create something without showing anyone. Rest more than you think you need. Month 2, April, is the grief and confusion stage, right? Grief can hit. For all years you weren't yourself, for relationships built on performance. This grief is sacred. Don't bypass, So in terms of the task, the grief ritual is right. A letter to the performance, burn it and cry. Notice where you're still performing. Practice being forgettable. Journal today. Today I've performed. Today I've resisted. Month 3, March, is the anger and activation. So Lilith's rage fully activates. You can be angry at conditioning, at everyone who took performance and never saw you, at yourself, good. That rage is medicine. The task here is that rage, movement practice, as I said, screen, dance, whatever. Set boundaries without explaining. Identify one relationship where you need to speak truth, then speak it. Practice on apologetic space taking. Month 4, June, is the stabilization and testing stage, right? So life can become more stable, but the eclipse themes reactivated, the early June, the 3rd month trigger. This is the test. Have you been integrating or performing integration? So review what's actually changed versus what you intellectualize. Identified where you're still performing. Recommit to authentic practices. Have a relationship check-in with yourself, and which relationships are deepening, which are ending. Month 5 is July, right? So this is the embodiment, living it, right? And practice phase. So new patterns can start to feel more natural. Catching yourself earlier when you're performing, right? Still work, to catch yourself and to stop yourself mid-performance. So at this month, right, it's about, doing the work, not performing doing the work, right? So living it practice, a daily living it practice can be good. Create one thing weekly just for you. Practice being good enough instead of special. Deepen the relationship with those who see the real you. Month 6, August to September before the next lunar eclipse, right, is the integration and reactivation phase, right? So early September, the eclipse trigger when there's the new eclipse, right? Lunar eclipse, the final test. Themes can reactivate one more time, but you're different now. The task is to review the full 6-month journey from March to September, identify what's genuinely integrated versus what needs more work, celebrate what has changed, set intentions for continued integration, right? Like underground river, maybe you can't see where it's going, but it's moving. Trust the current beneath the surface. By September, you maybe won't be healed, but remember, integration isn't a straight line, but you'll know the difference between performing and existing. Catch yourself faster, choose authenticity more often, not perfection. Progress, not never performing less, existing more. That's freedom, that's the North Node, that's the other side of the eclipse, right? So ultimately, this lunar eclipse in Leo on the 3rd of March isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before you learned to perform. You were enough before you learned you had to be special. You were worthy before you learned love was conditional. You were real before you learned to create yourself for survival. Maybe the performance kept you alive. Honor that, thank it, then let it go. What to remember during, the 6 months and during the eclipse is that when the grief hits, when the rage surfaces and comes up, when you feel like falling apart, remember you're not broken, you're responding to a broken system. The system that taught you to perform for survival. This eclipse is teaching you that survival doesn't require performance anymore. You're safe now, you can be ordinary, you can be messy, you can be real. So the work ahead, as I said, this 6-month integration arc, you won't be fit by September, but you will be more yourself if you continue or start the work of being so. You'll catch yourself in the performance earlier. You will choose authenticity more often. You will need validation less desperately, because it's not about giving up all validation. It's about seeing the pattern and slowly weaning yourself off it as you build up your sense of self and internal, validation. And remember, it's not about perfection, it's about progress, and that's where the freedom lives. Like Erykah Badu sings in Bag Lady, you're gonna hurt your back dragging all those bags around, right? So letting go of the baggage. Your mother's unspoken ways, maybe your dad's alcoholic ways, or substance abuse in your family, whatever it was, the trauma, that relationship that nearly broke you, are still in suitcases maybe, and this eclipse is saying let it go, let it go, let it go, right? So as Bob Marley sang in Redemption Song also, emancipate yourself, free yourself from mental slavery, right? No one but yourself can free your mind. And if you have been enslaved to performance, to validation, to the belief that specialness equals survival, this eclipse is your redemption song. Sing it live. You have what you need, not to perform perfectly, but to exist authentically. That's the North Node promise, right? You matter without mattering more than anyone else. You can sign in service of something larger. You can exist without needing applause to prove it. And that's the freedom on the other side of the eclipse, So yeah, go get it, Ultimately, what I would like to say as final words about this eclipse is that you're not alone. This eclipse asks hard things, impossibly hard sometimes, releasing performance when performance has been survival. Oh my gosh, that's scary, right? Being ordinary when specialness has been safety, that's unbearable. Existing without validation when validation has been oxygen, that can be suffocating, but you're not alone in this. Everyone is going through versions of this. Collectively, we're being asked to change from individual glory to collective service, right? From performance to authenticity, from specialness to actual contribution. And you're part of this change. Your individual crisis is part of collective evolution. That doesn't make it easier, but it does make it meaningful. And meaning, actual meaning, not performed meaning, is what the North Node in Aquarius is offering. Work that matters because it serves, not because it makes you special, community where you belong because you show up, not because you performed, worth that comes from being alive, not from being applauded, not from getting them likes, that engagement, right? That's the other side. That's what this crisis, this lunar eclipse in Leo, is creating space for. That's why the performance has to die, so the real you and real changes can come up and emerge, right? So Alice Miller wrote in the drama of The Gifted Child that the false self we constructed to survive childhood becomes the prison that confines us in adulthood, and this eclipse is dismantling that prison brick by brick, performance by performance, until what remains is the actual you, not the version you thought you had to be, the version you actually are. So, Peter Tosh sang, also Bob Marley did, but Peter Tosh did the version as well, Get Up, Stand Up, not as a performance of resistance, but as a call to authentic action. Don't give up the fight. This eclipse is your fight, not against others, against the conditioning that taught you performance equals survival. Stand up, not for applause, not for likes, not for engagement, but for yourself, right? And trust the process, feel the pain, do the work, ask for help, be patient with yourself. Remember, the performance kept you alive once. Honor that, thank it and release it, but you don't need it anymore. You're safe enough to exist without it. This eclipse is proving that by force. Let it, surrender to the transformation, become who you actually are. You've been performing long enough to just be. That's all, just be. May this eclipse bring you the courage, to start performing and the grace to start existing, right? So yeah, thanks a lot if you've listened to this whole in-depth analysis of, the emotional reckoning, judgment calling out eclipse, which has been the Leo, or will be, depending on when you listen to this, lunar eclipse in Leo, that sat as the performance that you never chose, right? And it's all about showing up as the authentic you and the aspects that the planets are making, and the Sabian symbols and the transit patterns like the Force Hammer and the Stellium, right, are all supporting us to do so, right? So thank you for listening. I'm Imani, your holistic karmic astrological life coach, and it's been my pleasure to bring you this. Take care and see you next time.